When Savannah Pierce drove her elbow into Victor Grayson's ribs, hard enough to double him over in the middle of Caldwell's main street, the entire frontier town went silent. Nobody touched Victor Grayson. He owned half the county, 3 judges, and the kind of fear that made grown men cross the street when they saw him coming. But Savannah, broke, stranded, and carrying nothing but a battered travel bag and the last shreds of her dignity, had finally reached her limit with powerful men who thought they could decide her fate. That single moment of defiance triggered a war that would consume the Wyoming territory, destroy empires built on corruption, and force 2 people running from their pasts to face the one thing more terrifying than violence: the possibility of actually trusting someone again. If you want to see how a woman with 37 cents and stubborn pride brought down a tyrant, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The stagecoach that deposited Savannah Pierce in Caldwell, Wyoming, arrived 3 hours late, covered in dust, and missing one wheel spoke that rattled ominously for the last 40 miles. When she climbed down onto the packed dirt street, her legs trembled from exhaustion, and her stomach cramped from hunger she'd been ignoring for 2 days straight. 37 cents remained in her coin purse. Everything else, her savings, her plans, her carefully constructed escape route, had evaporated somewhere between Omaha and the broken promise of a teaching position that turned out to be a clerical error in a letter sent 4 months ago. Savannah stood there in the fading afternoon light, watching the stagecoach pull away, and felt the weight of complete isolation settle over her shoulders like a physical thing. Caldwell wasn't much to look at: a single main street lined with weathered storefronts, a saloon that looked like it had survived more brawls than renovations, a general store with windows so dusty you could barely see inside, and a handful of other buildings whose purposes weren't immediately clear. Mountains rose in the distance, beautiful and utterly indifferent to her problems. She needed work. She needed shelter. She needed food. In that order. Savannah picked up her travel bag, leather worn soft from years of use, one handle repaired with twine, and started walking toward the general store. Her dress was wrinkled from days of travel, her hair escaping its pins, and she could feel dirt caked against her neck, but appearances didn't matter when survival was the priority. The door creaked when she pushed it open. Inside, the store smelled like coffee, wood shavings, and something vaguely medicinal. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with everything from canned goods to rope to bolts of fabric. A heavy-set man with thinning hair and suspicious eyes stood behind the counter, watching her. "Help you?" His tone suggested he already doubted she could pay for anything. "I'm looking for work," Savannah said plainly. "Do you know anyone hiring? I can cook, clean, keep accounts, teach children." "Nobody's hiring." The response came too fast, too automatic. Savannah's jaw tightened. "I haven't told you my qualifications yet." "Don't need to." The man crossed his arms. "You just got off that stage. You got the look of someone running from something. We don't need that kind of trouble here." "I'm not running from trouble." "Then what are you running from?" Savannah met his eyes directly. "That's my business. And keeping this town peaceful is mine." He jerked his chin toward the door. "Try the next county." She wanted to argue. She wanted to slam her hand on the counter and demand fairness, demand a chance, demand basic human decency. But Savannah had learned the hard way that demanding things rarely worked when you had no leverage. So she turned and walked back outside. The street felt even emptier than before. Savannah stood there, bag in hand, and forced herself to think strategically instead of emotionally. The general store had been a long shot anyway. Ranches would be better. Ranchers always needed cooks, especially heading into winter. She just needed to find out where the nearest ones were, and, "You lost?" The voice came from behind her, male, amused. Savannah turned. "Savannah." The man standing there was tall, well-dressed by frontier standards, and wore the kind of confident smile that immediately put her on guard. He looked like he was in his 40s, with gray threading through dark hair and eyes that assessed her the way someone might assess livestock at auction. "I'm fine," Savannah said carefully. "You don't look fine. You look like you just got off a stagecoach with nowhere to go." He stepped closer. "I'm Victor Grayson. I own most of the businesses in Caldwell. If you're looking for work, I might be able to help." Something in his tone made her skin crawl. Savannah had met men like Victor before, powerful men who offered help that came with invisible strings attached, men who smiled while backing you into corners. "What kind of work?" she asked. "Depends on your skills." His gaze traveled down her body slowly, deliberately. I run a boarding house. Always need girls to help with cooking, cleaning, entertaining guests. The way he said entertaining made his meaning clear. Anger flared hot in Savannah's chest. I'm not interested, she said coldly. Victor's smile didn't waver. You sure? You look like you could use a hot meal and a bed. I provide both. All you have to do is be friendly. I said no. Shame. He tilted his head. Because I also own the sheriff, the land office, and enough of this county that nobody works here without my permission. So if you're planning to find respectable employment, you might want to reconsider being rude. The threat was delivered casually, almost pleasantly. Savannah felt her pulse quicken. She'd dealt with predators before, but never in a place this isolated, this far from any support system or legal recourse. Excuse me, she said quietly, and started to walk past him. Victor's hand shot out and grabbed her arm. Not hard enough to bruise, just hard enough to stop her. We're not done talking, he said, still smiling. That's when Savannah's control snapped. Years of swallowing insults, enduring propositions, being treated like property by men who thought power gave them ownership, all of it ignited in a single moment of white-hot fury. She twisted, planted her feet, and drove her elbow into Victor Grayson's ribs with every ounce of strength she had. The impact was solid, satisfying. Victor let go immediately, stumbling backward with a grunt of pain and shock. The entire street went silent. Savannah could feel eyes on her from every direction. Shopkeepers in doorways, cowboys on horseback, women pausing mid-conversation, everyone staring. Victor straightened slowly, one hand pressed against his side. The pleasant smile was gone. His expression now was cold and flat and dangerous. You just made a mistake, he said quietly. No, Savannah said, her voice shaking but steady. You did. For 3 long seconds, they stared at each other. Then Victor laughed. It was a terrible sound, sharp and humorless. Nobody works in this town without my approval, he said. And you just guaranteed you'll never get it. By sunset, every rancher, every merchant, every widow with a spare room will know not to help you. You'll starve in the street before anyone risks crossing me. He turned and walked away, still favoring his ribs. Savannah stood frozen, bag clutched in both hands, while the enormity of what she'd just done crashed over her. She'd assaulted the most powerful man in the county, in public, without allies, money, or any way to leave. Someone cleared their throat behind her. Savannah spun around. A man stood there, leaning against the post of the general store awning. Tall, maybe early 30s, with dark hair, sun-weathered skin, and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore working clothes, simple shirt, worn pants, boots dusty from riding, and watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've seen in a long time, he said. Probably both, Savannah admitted. You got somewhere to go? Not anymore. The man studied her for a moment longer, then pushed off from the post. My name's Cole Mercer. I run a cattle ranch about 10 miles north of here. I need a cook. Job comes with a room, meals, and $40 a month. Interested? Savannah's heart lurched with hope so sharp it hurt. Why are you offering this? Because my current cook can barely boil water without setting something on fire, and I'm tired of eating charcoal 3 times a day. Cole's expression remained neutral. Also because Victor Grayson is a bastard, and I don't like seeing him push people around. He just said nobody would hire me. Victor says a lot of things. Doesn't mean I have to listen. Savannah searched his face for signs of deception, hidden motives, anything that might indicate this was another trap. But Cole Mercer just looked tired and practical, like a man making a business decision. What's the catch? She asked. No catch. You cook, you clean the house, you stay out of the way when ranch work gets busy. That's it. And you expect nothing else? Cole's jaw tightened slightly. I expect good food, and someone who doesn't burn down my kitchen. That's all. Savannah hesitated. Every instinct screamed that accepting help from strange men led to disaster, but the alternative was staying in Caldwell with no money, no shelter, and a powerful enemy who'd just promised to destroy her. When do we leave? She asked. Now. Cole nodded toward a horse tied nearby. Unless you've got other plans. Savannah glanced back down the street. Victor Grayson was talking to a group of men outside the saloon. All of them were looking in her direction. No, she said. No other plans. Cole untied his horse and swung into the saddle with practiced ease, then offered her his hand. Savannah grabbed it, let him pull her up behind him, and wrapped one arm around her travel bag while the other circled his waist to keep from falling. "Hold on," Cole said, and urged the horse into motion. They rode out of Caldwell as the sun began its descent toward the mountains. Savannah didn't look back. The ride to Mercer Ranch took nearly 2 hours. Cole didn't talk much. Occasionally he'd point out landmarks, a creek that ran year-round, a ridge where elk gathered in winter, the boundary line where his property started. But mostly, he stayed quiet. Savannah was grateful for the silence. It gave her time to think. She'd gambled everything on a stranger's offer. Again. The last time she'd trusted someone's promise of respectable employment, she'd ended up trapped in a situation that destroyed her reputation and nearly broke her spirit entirely. But what choice did she have? The landscape rolled past in shades of gold and amber. Grassland stretched endlessly, broken occasionally by clusters of trees or rocky outcroppings. The air smelled clean, sharp, with the promise of winter coming. Eventually, buildings appeared in the distance. Mercer Ranch sat in a shallow valley protected by low hills. The main house was simple but well-maintained. 2 stories, wooden construction, a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several outbuildings clustered nearby. A barn, bunkhouse, storage sheds, corrals. Cattle dotted the surrounding pastures, dark shapes against the grass. It looked solid, permanent. Cole rode directly to the main house and dismounted, then helped Savannah down. Her legs wobbled when her feet hit the ground. 2 hours on horseback after days of stagecoach travel had left her muscles screaming. "You all right?" Cole asked. "Fine, just need a minute." "Take your time." The front door of the house banged open and a man emerged, older, probably 60, with a graying beard and the lean build of someone who'd worked hard his entire life. "About damn time you got back," the older man said. "I was starting to think you'd—" He stopped when he saw Savannah. "Who's this?" "New cook," Cole said. "Savannah Pierce. Savannah, this is Roy. He runs the bunkhouse and pretends to cook." Roy squinted at her suspiciously. "You know how to make biscuits?" "Yes," Savannah said. "Good biscuits? Not those hard things that break teeth?" "Good biscuits." Roy grunted, apparently satisfied. "Kitchen's probably a mess. Cole eats like an animal when nobody's watching." "I do not," Cole protested. "Found a plate under your bed last week." "That was one time, with beans stuck to it." Savannah bit back a smile despite her exhaustion. Cole shot Roy an annoyed look, then turned back to Savannah. "I'll show you the house. Your room's upstairs. You can get settled tonight, start work tomorrow." He led her inside. The interior of the house was sparse but clean. A main room with a stone fireplace, simple furniture, and windows that let in the fading daylight. The kitchen occupied one corner, large cast-iron stove, work table, shelves stocked with basic supplies. Cole gestured toward the stairs. "Second door on the left. There's a wash basin up there. Water pumps out back if you need more." "Thank you," Savannah said quietly. Cole nodded, then hesitated. For a moment he looked like he wanted to say something else, but whatever it was remained unspoken. "Get some rest," he said finally, and walked back outside. Savannah climbed the stairs slowly, every step an effort. The room Cole had indicated was small but adequate. A bed with a quilt, a dresser, a chair by the window. Simple, clean, private. Savannah set down her travel bag and sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands were shaking. The full weight of the day crashed down all at once. The failed job, the confrontation with Victor, the desperate gamble of accepting work from a stranger. She'd been operating on adrenaline and survival instinct for so long that now, finally alone in a quiet room, her body simply gave out. She lay back on the quilt without even removing her boots. Through the window, she could see the sun setting behind distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere out there, Victor Grayson was probably already spreading word about the woman who dared strike him. Somewhere closer, Cole Mercer was doing whatever ranchers did. And here she was, Savannah Pierce, 37 cents to her name, gambling once again that this time would be different. That this time, she'd finally found a place where she could stop running. She closed her eyes. Sleep claimed her before full darkness fell. Fuck, Savannah woke to the sound of roosters and sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came back. Caldwell, Victor Grayson, Cole Mercer, the ranch. She sat up quickly, disoriented. Her dress was hopelessly wrinkled, her hair a disaster, and her mouth tasted like dust. What time was it? She stumbled to the window and looked out. The sun was already well above the horizon. Men were moving around the yard below, leading horses, carrying equipment. She'd slept far longer than intended. Panic spiked through her chest. First day, and she was already failing. Savannah grabbed her travel bag, pulled out the cleanest dress she owned, and changed as quickly as possible. Her hair got twisted into a hasty bun. No time for anything else. She rushed downstairs. The kitchen was empty, but evidence of breakfast was everywhere. Dirty plates stacked by the basin, crumbs on the work table, the smell of burnt coffee lingering in the air. The front door stood open. Savannah walked outside and found Roy sitting on the porch steps, smoking a pipe. "Morning," he said without turning around. "I'm sorry," Savannah said quickly. "I overslept. I should have—" "Cole said to let you sleep. But breakfast? Already handled. Boys ate an hour ago." Roy puffed his pipe. "Cole figured you needed rest more than we needed food that didn't taste like leather." Savannah felt her face flush. "That won't happen again." "Probably will. You looked half dead when you got here." Roy finally glanced back at her. "You run from somewhere bad?" The question was direct, blunt. Savannah tensed. "Does it matter?" "Nope. Just curious." Roy turned back to watching the yard. "We all got our reasons for ending up in places like this. Long as you can cook and don't cause problems, past is past." Something in his tone made Savannah relax slightly. "Where's Cole?" she asked. "Out checking fence lines. Won't be back till afternoon." Roy gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. "You want to make yourself useful. There's supplies in the pantry. Dinner's usually around 6. Feed 12 men, give or take." 12. Savannah's mind immediately started calculating portions, cooking times, what ingredients she had available. "Any dietary restrictions?" she asked. Roy laughed. "Lady, these are cowboys. They'll eat anything that doesn't eat them first." "Fair enough." Savannah went back inside and surveyed the kitchen properly. It was actually better equipped than she'd expected. Good knives, solid cookware, a decent selection of staples. Someone had stocked this kitchen knowing what they were doing, even if the recent cooking hadn't lived up to the tools available. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. By noon, she'd scrubbed the kitchen clean, organized the pantry, and started preparing dinner. Beef stew seemed appropriate. Hearty, simple, hard to ruin. She found potatoes, carrots, onions, and a decent cut of meat that had been stored in the cold room. The physical work felt good, familiar. When her hands were busy, her mind couldn't spiral into anxiety about everything that could go wrong. Around 2 o'clock, a young man appeared in the kitchen doorway. He couldn't have been more than 19, with sandy hair and a nervous energy that suggested he hadn't quite grown into his own body yet. "Roy said you're the new cook," he said. "That's right. I'm Savannah." "Curtis." He shifted his weight awkwardly. Is there any coffee? We ran out in the bunkhouse." "I just made a fresh pot. Help yourself." Curtis poured a cup and lingered near the table, clearly wanting to say something else. "You really hit Victor Grayson?" he asked finally. Word traveled fast. "Yes," Savannah said. "Why?" "Because he grabbed me." Curtis's eyes widened. "Nobody touches Victor Grayson." "Well, I did." "Aren't you scared?" He owns half the county. He could—" "I'm aware of what he could do," Savannah interrupted calmly, chopping carrots with more force than strictly necessary. "But being scared doesn't change anything, does it? He still grabbed me. I still hit him. What happens next happens regardless of whether I'm terrified or not." Curtis stared at her like she'd just explained advanced mathematics. "That's... Huh." He took a sip of coffee. "Cole doesn't like him either." "I gathered that. Victor's been trying to buy this ranch for years. Offers more money every time. Cole always says no." Savannah paused mid-chop. "Why does Victor want the ranch?" "Water rights. Mercer land controls access to the best creek in the region. Whoever owns this property basically controls grazing rights for thousands of acres around here." Curtis set down his cup. "Victor thinks if he owns the water, he owns everything. And Cole won't sell. Never. His father built this ranch. Cole grew up here. He'd burn it down before he'd let Victor take it. That explained the tension she'd sensed yesterday when Cole confronted Victor's implicit threat. This wasn't just about her. She'd stumbled into the middle of an existing war. Curtis finished his coffee and headed back outside, leaving Savannah alone with that uncomfortable realization. Batag. Cole returned late in the afternoon, riding in with two other men Savannah didn't recognize. She watched from the kitchen window as they dismounted, talked briefly, then headed toward the barn. Cole moved with an economy of motion, no wasted energy, everything deliberate and controlled. He didn't come to the house. Savannah told herself she wasn't disappointed. At 6 o'clock, men started filtering in for dinner. They came in groups of 2 or 3, most of them dusty and tired from a day's work. Roy made introductions, names Savannah immediately forgot in the rush of serving food. The dining table wasn't large enough for everyone, so the men ate in shifts. Some at the table, others standing or sitting on the porch. Nobody complained about the stew. In fact, several men went back for seconds, which Savannah took as a good sign. Cole appeared last, after most of the others had finished. He dished up a bowl, sat at the table, and ate in silence while Savannah cleaned up. "This is good," he said eventually. "Thank you. Better than Roy's cooking." "I heard that," Roy called from the porch. Cole's mouth twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. He finished eating, set his bowl in the basin, and turned to leave. "Mr. Mercer," Savannah said. He stopped. "Cole. Just Cole." "Cole, then. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity. I know it was a risk." "It's not charity," Cole interrupted. "You do the work, you earn the pay. That's how it works here." His tone was matter-of-fact, not unkind, but it made clear he didn't want gratitude. Savannah nodded. "Understood." Cole hesitated, then added, "Victor Grayson is dangerous. If he shows up here, you stay inside and let me handle it." "I can handle—" "I'm not questioning whether you can," Cole said. "I'm telling you that on this property, I deal with threats. That's not negotiable." There was steel beneath his calm exterior. Savannah recognized it immediately, the kind of strength that came from years of defending something precious against people who wanted to take it. "All right," she agreed. Cole nodded once and left. Savannah finished cleaning, then retreated to her room as the sun set. She was exhausted but restless. The day had gone well, better than expected. The men seemed decent, the work was manageable, and Cole Mercer hadn't given any indication that he expected anything beyond cooking. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the other shoe hadn't dropped yet. Victor Grayson didn't strike her as someone who made threats lightly. He would retaliate. The only question was when. The answer came 3 days later. Savannah had fallen into a routine by then. Wake before dawn, start coffee, prepare breakfast for 12 hungry men, clean up, start preparing dinner, repeat. The work was physically demanding but satisfying in a way her previous jobs had never been. Nobody bothered her. Nobody made inappropriate comments. The Cowboys treated her with casual respect. Not reverence, not suspicion, just the basic acknowledgement that she was doing her job and they appreciated it. It was almost peaceful. Then Victor Grayson arrived. Savannah was in the garden behind the house, harvesting the last of the late vegetables before frost killed everything. She heard horses approaching and looked up to see 4 riders coming up the main road toward the ranch. Victor rode in front, flanked by 3 men who looked like they got paid to intimidate people. Savannah's stomach clenched. She stood slowly, dirt on her hands, and watched them approach. Cole emerged from the barn at the same time, followed by Roy and Curtis. The other ranch hands appeared from various locations around the property, drawn by the sound of unexpected visitors. Victor reined in his horse about 20 feet from the house. "Cole Mercer," he called out pleasantly. "Haven't seen you in town lately." "Been busy," Cole replied, his tone flat. "I can see that. Heard you hired new help." Victor's gaze found Savannah standing by the garden. His smile widened. "There she is, the woman who assaulted me in front of half the town." "You grabbed her first," Cole said. "That's one version of events. Mine's different." Victor dismounted slowly, his men following suit. "See, the way I remember it, I offered a destitute woman honest work, and she attacked me without provocation. That's assault, Cole. Criminal behavior." "Get to the point, Victor." "The point is I want her arrested. I've spoken to the sheriff. He agrees that charges should be filed. Cole's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, a subtle tension that suggested violence was closer than it had been a moment ago. "You rode all the way out here to tell me that?" Cole asked. "I rode out here to collect her. Sheriff's waiting in town." Victor gestured toward Savannah. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go." Savannah didn't move. "She's not going anywhere," Cole said. Victor's smile faded. "You're harboring a criminal." "I'm employing a cook. Nothing criminal about that." "You can't protect her, Cole. The law's on my side. If you interfere with a lawful arrest, you become complicit." "Show me the warrant." Victor's jaw tightened. "Don't need a warrant. Sheriff gave me verbal authorization." "Then the sheriff can come out here himself with paperwork. Until then, get off my land." The air seemed to thicken. Victor's men shifted, hands moving closer to the guns at their hips. Roy, Curtis, and the other ranch hands moved closer to Cole, forming a loose line between Victor's group and the house. "You're making a mistake," Victor said quietly. "Wouldn't be the first time." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Victor laughed, that same terrible, humorless sound from the street in Caldwell. "Fine. Have it your way." He swung back into his saddle. "But you just made this personal, Cole, and that's going to cost you more than you realize." He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following. Nobody spoke until they disappeared from view. Then Roy let out a breath. "Well, that was stupid." "Probably," Cole agreed. "He's going to come back with the actual sheriff next time." "I know." Curtis looked between them, confused. "So what do we do?" Cole finally turned to look at Savannah, who was still standing frozen by the garden. "We figure out what Victor's really after," he said, "because this isn't about assault charges." Savannah's throat felt tight. "What is it about?" "You," Cole said simply. "He's using you to get at me, which means we need to make you untouchable." "How?" Cole was quiet for a moment, his storm gray eyes unreadable. Then he said something Savannah never expected to hear. "We get married." The world tilted sideways. "What?" Savannah breathed. "Not for real," Cole clarified quickly. "On paper. Legal marriage gives you protection under my name. Sheriff can't haul you off without cause if you're my lawful wife. Victor loses his leverage." Roy stared at Cole like he'd lost his mind. "You can't be serious." "You got a better idea?" "Yeah, send her to the next county before this gets worse." "No," Cole said flatly. "Cole, I said no." Cole's voice went hard. "Victor doesn't get to run people off my land with threats and fake charges. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. But I'm not sending her away." Savannah found her voice. "Why?" Cole looked at her directly. "Because Victor Grayson is a bully who's been terrorizing this county for years, and I'm tired of watching people run from him. Someone needs to stand up. Might as well be us." "You don't even know me." "I know enough." "This is insane," Roy muttered. Maybe it was. Probably it was. But Savannah looked at Cole Mercer, this quiet, stubborn rancher who'd offered her shelter when she had nothing, who'd just faced down 4 armed men to protect her, who was now proposing a fake marriage to shield her from a powerful enemy, and realized something important. She trusted him. Not completely. Not blindly. But enough. "All right," Savannah said. "Let's do it." Cole nodded once, as if that settled everything. Roy threw up his hands and walked away muttering about stubborn fools. And Savannah stood there in the garden with dirt on her hands, watching the sun sink toward the mountains, and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. The proposal hung in the air between them like smoke from a gunshot. Savannah stared at Cole, trying to read the expression on his face, and finding nothing but stubborn resolve. Behind him, Curtis looked absolutely baffled, and somewhere in the distance she could still hear Roy muttering curses as he stomped toward the bunkhouse. "We should talk about this inside," Cole said finally, breaking the silence, "before half the county hears about it." He was right. Already a few of the ranch hands were watching from the barn, curious about what had just happened with Victor's visit. Savannah nodded and followed Cole into the house. The kitchen felt smaller somehow, with just the two of them standing there. Cole pulled out a chair at the table and sat down heavily, like a man who'd just made a decision he wasn't entirely comfortable with but saw no way around. Savannah remained standing, her back against the counter, arms crossed. "Walk me through this," she said. "How exactly does a fake marriage solve anything?" It's not fake if it's legal, Cole replied. We go into town, file the paperwork, make it official. Once you're Mrs. Mercer, Victor can't touch you without going through me first. He'd have to prove I'm unfit or that the marriage is fraudulent. Both of those take time, lawyers, evidence he doesn't have. And when he figures out we're not actually married, really married, who's going to tell him? We live on an isolated ranch. Nobody here is going to say anything. Far as the rest of the county knows, I brought home a woman and married her quick. Happens all the time out here. Savannah shook her head slowly. People aren't stupid, Cole. They'll notice we don't act like a married couple. Then we act like one in public. Act how, exactly? Cole shifted in his chair, uncomfortable now. I don't know. Stand closer together. Use each other's first names. Whatever married people do. You've never been married. It wasn't a question. She could tell just by looking at him. No, Cole admitted. Have you? No. They stared at each other across the kitchen, two people who barely knew each other discussing a legal commitment that typically required years of courtship. Savannah laughed suddenly, a short, sharp sound edged with hysteria. This is insane, she said. You already agreed. I know. That's the insane part. She pushed off from the counter and started pacing. What happens when this is over? When Victor finally gives up or gets bored or gets arrested for whatever illegal thing he's inevitably doing, do we just get divorced? Annulled? If that's what you want. What about what you want? Cole was quiet for a long moment. I want Victor Grayson to stop thinking he can control people's lives. I want him off my land and away from anyone under my protection. If that means signing some papers and wearing a ring for a few months, that's fine. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Everything else is just details. Savannah stopped pacing and looked at him directly. Why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's just about standing up to bullies. You could have let me leave Caldwell. You could have ignored what happened in the street. But you didn't. Why? Cole met her gaze without flinching. You want the truth? Yes. Because when I saw you elbow Victor in the ribs, I thought to myself, that's someone who's done being pushed around. That's someone who'd rather fight than fold. He paused. I respect that. It wasn't a declaration of affection or romantic interest. It was something simpler and somehow more honest. Recognition. Savannah felt something tight in her chest, loosened slightly. All right, she said. We'll do it. But we need rules. What kind of rules? Boundaries. This is a business arrangement, not a real marriage. We're clear about that from the start. No expectations beyond what we agree to right now. Cole nodded. Fair enough. I keep my own room, my own space. Nothing changes there. Agreed. And when this is over, when Victor's dealt with and there's no more threat, we end it cleanly. No drama, no complications. Fine by me. Savannah searched his face for any sign he was hiding something, some ulterior motive or unspoken expectation. But Cole just looked tired and practical, like a man solving a problem with the tools available. Okay, she said. When do we do this? Tomorrow. We'll ride into town, file the paperwork, make it official before Victor has time to move against us. Will the county clerk even process it that fast? If I pay him enough, yes. Money solving problems again. Savannah was beginning to understand how this world worked. What do I tell people? She asked. If they ask how we met, why we're getting married so quickly. Cole thought about it. We met when you came through Caldwell looking for work. I hired you as a cook. We spent time together, realized we got along, decided not to wait. Simple story. Close enough to the truth that it's easy to remember. And if someone asks why you'd marry a woman you barely know, I'll tell them I'm not getting any younger and I'm tired of eating burnt food. Despite everything, Savannah almost smiled. Romantic. Practical, Cole corrected. Romance is for people with time to waste. We're solving a problem. He stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, he just looked at her, and Savannah had the strange sense that he was memorizing her face, cataloging details for later. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow's going to be long. He left the kitchen, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Savannah stood alone in the empty room, listening to the sound of him moving around upstairs, and wondered what the hell kind of life she'd just agreed to. Chunk. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Savannah lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through every possible way this could go wrong. What if Victor found proof the marriage was a sham? What if Cole changed his mind halfway through? What if the entire plan backfired and made everything worse? But underneath the anxiety was something else. A strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, someone was standing between her and the consequences of defending herself. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't running. That feeling was dangerous. She knew it was dangerous. Because the moment you started depending on someone was the moment they could destroy you. Savannah had learned that lesson the hard way back east, when she'd trusted a man who promised security and delivered humiliation instead. Edmund Hale had been charming, wealthy, respectable. He'd courted her properly, made all the right promises, even spoke to her father about marriage. Then she'd rejected him. Not because of anything he'd done wrong at first, simply because when he'd proposed, Savannah had looked at the future he was offering. Quiet domesticity in his shadow, her entire life shrunk down to match his expectations, and realized she couldn't breathe. She'd said no as kindly as she could. Edmund hadn't taken it well. Within a week, rumors started spreading. Savannah was a seductress who'd led him on for his money. She was morally corrupt, manipulative, unsuitable for respectable society. Edmund's mother made sure every influential woman in their social circle heard the stories. His friends made sure the men knew Savannah Pierce was damaged goods. Her father, ashamed and furious, had thrown her out. And just like that, Savannah's entire life collapsed. She'd spent the next 2 years surviving however she could, teaching jobs that paid almost nothing, sewing work that destroyed her eyesight, positions that evaporated the moment someone learned her name and connected it to the scandal. That's what had brought her west, the desperate hope that distance would erase the past. It hadn't worked. Edmund Hale's reputation had followed her like a shadow, showing up in whispers and closed doors and sudden job cancellations when someone bothered to check her references. And now here she was, about to legally bind herself to another man she barely knew. The difference, Savannah told herself, was that Cole Mercer had been honest from the start. This was a transaction, not a romance. A business arrangement with clear terms and an exit strategy. That was safer, wasn't it? Savannah finally fell asleep sometime after midnight, her dreams uneasy and fragmented. Cole knocked on her door before dawn. "We leave in 20 minutes, he said through the wood. "Wear something decent. We need to look convincing." Savannah dragged herself out of bed and surveyed her limited wardrobe with dismay. She owned exactly 2 dresses that weren't completely worn through, one dark blue that she'd been wearing for cooking, and one gray that looked slightly more formal but had a stain on the sleeve she'd never quite managed to remove. She chose the gray and did her best with her hair, pinning it up properly for the first time in days. When she came downstairs, Cole was waiting by the door wearing clothes she'd never seen before. Dark pants, a clean shirt, a vest that actually fit properly. He looked uncomfortable, like a man dressed for church against his will. "You look nice," Savannah said. "I look ridiculous," Cole muttered. "Let's go before I change my mind." They rode into town together on the same horse, Savannah sitting behind Cole with her arms around his waist. It was intimate in a way that made her self-conscious, feeling the warmth of his body through the fabric of his shirt, the steady rhythm of his breathing. Cole didn't speak the entire ride. Caldwell looked different in early morning light, less threatening, just small and dusty and ordinary. A few people were already moving around, opening shops, sweeping storefronts. Several of them stopped to stare when they recognized Cole and Savannah riding together. Cole ignored them completely. He tied the horse outside the county clerk's office and helped Savannah down. His hand lingered on her waist for just a second longer than necessary, and she wondered if he was already playing the role or if it was unconscious. Inside, the clerk was a thin man with spectacles and the harried look of someone perpetually behind on paperwork. "Help you?" he asked without looking up. "We need to file a marriage certificate," Cole said. That got the clerk's attention. He glanced up, saw who was standing there, and his eyebrows shot up. "Cole Mercer? Getting married? That a problem?" No, just surprised." The clerk shuffled papers around. "You got a license? We'll get one now." "That's not how it works. You need to apply for the license, wait 3 days. Cole pulled out a roll of bills and set it on the counter. "We'd like to expedite the process." The clerk stared at the money, then at Cole, then at Savannah. "This your idea or his?" he asked her directly. "Mine," Savannah lied smoothly. "We don't see the point in waiting. Folks usually wait because marriage is permanent." "We're aware," Cole said flatly. "Are we doing this or not?" The clerk sighed, took the money, and started pulling out forms. 10 minutes later, they were legally married. It was the strangest, most businesslike wedding Savannah had ever imagined. No ceremony, no witnesses beyond the clerk, no vows beyond signing their names on paper. The clerk stamped the document, filed it away, and that was it. "Congratulations," he said, sounding dubious. Cole nodded once and steered Savannah back outside. The street felt brighter, louder, more real. Savannah looked down at her hand. No ring, nothing to mark what had just happened, and felt completely disconnected from reality. "That's it?" she said. "We're married?" "Legally, yes." It didn't feel like anything. "Because it isn't anything," Cole replied. "It's just paperwork, protection, nothing more." But the way he said it, quick, almost defensive, made Savannah wonder if he was trying to convince her or himself. They started walking back toward the horse when a voice called out behind them. "Well, well, congratulations to the happy couple." Savannah's blood went cold. She turned to see Victor Grayson standing outside the saloon, that familiar, terrible smile on his face. 2 of his men flanked him, looking amused. Cole stepped slightly in front of Savannah, a subtle shift in position that put his body between her and Victor. "Victor," Cole said evenly, "heard you 2 were getting hitched. Didn't believe it until I saw you coming out of the clerk's office." Victor's gaze slid to Savannah. "Quick courtship, almost suspicious how quick." "Nothing suspicious about it," Cole said. "We're done here. Excuse us." He tried to move past, but Victor stepped into their path. "I haven't congratulated the bride yet." "She doesn't need your congratulations." "Now that's rude, Cole. We're all neighbors here." Victor looked directly at Savannah, his expression calculating. "You sure you know what you're getting into? Cole Mercer's not exactly the marrying type. Makes a person wonder what changed." "Nothing changed," Savannah said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "We decided we suit each other, that's all." "Suit each other?" Victor repeated, tasting the words. Interesting way to put it. Most people say they're in love. "We're private people," Cole cut in. "Now move." For a moment, Victor didn't budge. Then he smiled again and stepped aside. "Of course. Don't let me keep you from your honeymoon." He tipped his hat mockingly. "Mrs. Mercer." The name sounded wrong coming from his mouth. Cole took Savannah's arm and led her quickly to the horse. He lifted her up, mounted behind her this time so she was sitting in front, and urged the animal into a trot before Victor could say anything else. They didn't speak until Caldwell was well behind them. Then Savannah let out a shaky breath. "He knows." "Probably. He's going to challenge it, claim it's fraudulent." "Let him try. We filed legal paperwork. He'd need proof we're not actually married, and he won't find any. Because we're going to pretend—" "Because on paper it's real," Cole interrupted. "That's all that matters legally." But his jaw was tight, and Savannah could feel tension radiating through his shoulders where her back rested against his chest. Victor's appearance had rattled him more than he wanted to admit. They rode in silence for a while, the landscape rolling past in shades of gold and green. Finally, Cole spoke again, his voice low and close to her ear. "If this gets too hard, if Victor escalates and you want out, tell me. I'll figure something else out." Savannah turned her head slightly to look at him. "And if I don't want out?" Cole's expression was unreadable. "Then we see it through together." It wasn't a promise exactly, more like an acknowledgement that whatever happened next, they were in it now, for better or worse. When they got back to the ranch, Roy was waiting on the porch with his arms crossed and a scowl on his weathered face. "You actually did it," he said. "You crazy son of a—" "Careful," Cole warned. "Don't you careful me. You just married a woman you've known for less than a week." "On paper," Cole said, dismounting. "Nothing's changed." "Everything's changed. Victor's going to come at you 10 times harder now." "Let him." Roy threw up his hands. "You're going to get yourself killed over this." "I'm not getting killed. I'm protecting what's mine." The way he said mine made Savannah's stomach flutter uncomfortably. She slid down from the horse, nearly stumbling on the landing. Cole caught her elbow automatically, steadying her, and even that small touch felt different now. Weighted with implications she didn't want to examine. Curtis appeared from the barn, took one look at them, and grinned. "Holy hell, you actually married her!" "Word travels fast," Savannah muttered. Roy told everyone at breakfast. Curtis looked between them with unconcealed curiosity. "So are you going to have a party or something? Usually there's a party." "No party," Cole said firmly. "Back to work. All of you." The ranch hands scattered, though Savannah could hear them talking as they walked away. She caught fragments. "Never thought Cole would," and "she must be something special." Special. Right. She was convenient, strategic, a problem that needed solving. Nothing special about it. Cole started toward the house, then stopped and turned back. "You should probably move your things." Savannah blinked. "What?" "Into my room. Anyone who visits needs to believe we're actually married. That means sleeping in the same room." Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. "You said nothing would change. And it won't. I'll sleep on the floor. You take the bed. But if someone shows up unexpected, Victor, the sheriff, anyone, they need to see evidence we're living as husband and wife." It made sense logically, but the thought of sharing a room with him, even platonically, made Savannah's skin feel too tight. "Fine," she said. "I'll move my things later." Cole nodded and went inside. Roy sidled up next to Savannah. "You know what you're doing?" "No," she admitted. "Not really." Cole's a good man. Honest. Hardworking. Loyal to the point of stupidity sometimes. Roy pulled out his pipe. "But he's been hurt before. Woman he loved ran off with a cattle buyer from Cheyenne about 5 years back. Left him a letter saying she couldn't spend her life on an isolated ranch with a man who loved dirt and animals more than her." Savannah felt something twist in her chest. "He told you that?" "Hell no. Cole doesn't talk about feelings. I heard it from the ranch hands who were here back then." Roy lit his pipe. "Point is, he doesn't trust easy. And this marriage stunt you two are pulling? It's going to mess with his head whether he admits it or not." "It's temporary," Savannah said. "We both know that." "Sure, keep telling yourself that." Roy puffed smoke. "Just don't be surprised when temporary starts feeling permanent. Happens faster than you think." He walked away before Savannah could respond. Moving her things into Cole's room felt surreal. Savannah carried her travel bag upstairs in the middle of the afternoon when most of the men were out working. Cole's room was at the end of the hall, larger than hers, with a bigger bed, a dresser, a trunk at the foot of the bed, and windows overlooking the front of the property. It was neat in a military kind of way. No clutter, no personal items beyond the absolute necessities. The room of someone who didn't expect company. Savannah set her bag down and looked around uncertainly. Where was she supposed to put her clothes? The dresser was probably full of Cole's things. She didn't want to intrude more than necessary. She was still standing there, paralyzed by indecision, when footsteps sounded in the hall. Cole appeared in the doorway. He stopped when he saw her, and for a second they just stared at each other awkwardly. "I cleared out 2 drawers," he said finally, nodding toward the dresser, "and half the closet. You can use those." "You didn't have to—" "Yes, I did. We're supposed to look married." He hesitated. "There's a dressing screen in the corner if you want privacy when changing." The consideration surprised her. "Thank you," Savannah said quietly. Cole nodded once, then turned to leave. "Cole." He stopped, hand on the doorframe, but didn't look back. "Why did she leave?" Savannah asked. "The woman before." His shoulders tensed. "Who told you about that?" "Roy. He said she left because she didn't want to live on an isolated ranch." "That about sums it up." "Was that the real reason?" Now Cole did turn around, and his expression was guarded. "Why does it matter?" "Because I need to know if you're doing this, the marriage, the protection, because you actually care about stopping Victor, or because you're trying to prove something to yourself." It was blunt. Maybe too blunt. But Savannah was tired of dancing around the truth. Cole's jaw worked for a moment. Then he said, "Her name was Rebecca. We were together 3 years. I thought we were building something. She thought she was wasting her life waiting for me to become someone more interesting." He paused. "The day she left, she told me I was a good man but a boring one, and she couldn't spend the rest of her life being bored. The pain in his voice was old, but not fully healed. Savannah felt an unexpected surge of anger toward this Rebecca, whoever she was. She was wrong, Savannah said. Cole's eyebrows rose. You've known me less than a week. Long enough to see you're not boring. Stubborn, yes. Quiet, definitely. But not boring. Savannah crossed her arms. Boring people don't stand up to tyrants. Boring people don't offer shelter to strangers. Boring people don't propose fake marriages to protect someone they barely know. Something shifted in Cole's expression. Surprise, maybe, or confusion. Are you defending me to myself? He asked. Someone should. For a long moment they just looked at each other. Then Cole's mouth twitched in what might have been the start of a smile. I'll keep that in mind. He left before Savannah could say anything else. She stood alone in their room, her heart beating faster than it should, and wondered when exactly this had stopped feeling like pure strategy. That night, sleeping in the same room felt impossible at first. Cole made good on his word and set up a bedroll on the floor near the window. Savannah took the bed, fully clothed under the quilt because undressing felt too vulnerable. They lay there in the darkness, the space between them charged with awkwardness. You don't have to sleep on the floor, Savannah said finally. The bed's big enough to share if we stay on opposite sides. I'm fine here. Cole, this is your room, your bed. I'm not kicking you out of it. You're not. I'm choosing to sleep here. Stubborn man, Savannah sighed. At least take a pillow. I have one. A second pillow, then. The floor can't be comfortable. I've slept on worse. They fell silent again. Minutes passed. Then Cole's voice came out of the darkness, quieter than before. Thank you. For what? For what you said earlier about Rebecca being wrong. Savannah rolled onto her side, trying to see him in the dimness. She could just make out his shape on the floor, one arm folded under his head. I meant it, she said. I know. That's what makes it matter. Something in his tone made her chest feel tight. Cole, when this is over, when we end the marriage, we'll still be friends, right? The question surprised her as soon as she asked it. She hadn't planned to say that. Cole was quiet for so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, yeah, we'll still be friends. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt like a door closing. Savannah lay back and stared at the ceiling, listening to Cole's breathing gradually even out into sleep, and tried to ignore the complicated knot of feelings tangled in her chest. This was temporary. A business arrangement. Nothing more. She just needed to remember that. Termites. The next morning brought new problems. Savannah was making breakfast when Curtis burst into the kitchen, breathless and agitated. Cole needs to see this, he said. Now! She followed him outside to find Cole and Roy standing by the east fence line, staring at something. When Savannah got closer, she saw what had them upset. Someone had cut the fence. Not just cut it, destroyed a 30-foot section completely, leaving the wire tangled and useless. Worse, 3 head of cattle were missing from the pasture beyond. Victor, Cole said, his voice flat and cold. Has to be, Roy agreed. This happened sometime during the night. Whoever did it knew exactly where to hit us. He's escalating, Savannah said. Cole turned to look at her, and the anger in his eyes was frightening. Not directed at her, but present nonetheless. He's trying to provoke me into doing something stupid, Cole said. Something that gives him legal grounds to come after the ranch. So what do we do? Fix the fence, find the cattle if we can, document everything. Cole's hands curled into fists. And wait. For what? For Victor to make a mistake. Because he will. Men like him always do. But waiting felt impossible when the enemy kept attacking. Over the next week, things got worse. Fences were cut repeatedly. Supplies went missing. Someone spooked the horses one night, causing 2 of them to injure themselves trying to escape the corral. And then the rumors started. Savannah heard them when she went into town for supplies with Roy. Women whispered behind their hands when she passed. Men smirked and made crude jokes just loud enough for her to hear. The story spreading through Caldwell was that Savannah had seduced Cole Mercer for his money, that she was a con artist from back east who specialized in trapping wealthy men, that the marriage was a sham and Cole was too naive to see it. By the time they got back to the ranch, Savannah was shaking with fury. They think I'm a whore and a thief, she told Cole. They think I tricked you. I don't care what they think. Well, I do, because those rumors make it harder to defend ourselves. If people believe I'm corrupt, they'll believe anything Victor says about me. Cole set down the tool he'd been holding. So we prove them wrong. How? We act like a real couple, not just on paper, in town, in public, where people can see. Savannah's pulse jumped. Act how? Like we care about each other. Cole's expression was carefully neutral. Hold hands. Stand close. Use terms of endearment. Whatever it takes to sell the story. Terms of endearment, Savannah repeated weakly. Unless you have a better idea. She didn't, but the thought of pretending intimacy with Cole made her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with fear. Fine, she said. When? Next Sunday. There's a town gathering after church services. Everyone will be there. We make an appearance, act like newlyweds, and let people see for themselves that this marriage is real. Savannah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. This was still strategy, still protection. Nothing had changed, except everything had changed, and they both knew it. Sunday came too quickly. Savannah spent an hour trying to make herself presentable with limited resources. Her gray dress again, her hair pinned up properly, a cameo brooch her mother had given her years ago pinned at her throat. When she came downstairs, Cole was waiting. He dressed up too, clean shirt, vest, boots polished. He looked uncomfortable but determined. Ready? He asked. No, but let's go anyway. The ride into town felt different this time. Cole sat behind her on the horse, one arm wrapped around her waist to keep her steady, and Savannah was hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. When they arrived, the town square was already crowded. People gathered in clusters, talking and laughing. Children ran between the groups. Someone had set up tables with food. Conversation died when Cole and Savannah appeared. Everyone turned to stare. Cole dismounted, then helped Savannah down. But instead of releasing her immediately like he normally would, his hand stayed on her waist. Remember, he murmured near her ear. We're newlyweds. Act like it. Then he laced his fingers through hers and led her into the crowd. The first person who approached them was the minister, an elderly man with kind eyes and a curious expression. Cole Mercer, married, never thought I'd see the day. He smiled at Savannah. You must be quite a woman to catch this one. I'm lucky, Savannah said, trying to sound sincere. How did you two meet? This was the story they'd rehearsed. Cole answered smoothly. She came through Caldwell looking for work. I hired her as cook. Spent enough time together to realize we suited each other. Love at first sight? The minister asked, smiling. Something like that, Cole said, and squeezed Savannah's hand gently. The gesture was so natural, so convincing, that for a moment even Savannah almost believed it. They moved through the crowd, making conversation, accepting congratulations that felt hollow. Savannah kept her smile fixed and her hand in Cole's, playing the role of happy bride while her stomach twisted with guilt. These people believed the lie. Some of them were genuinely happy for Cole, thinking he'd finally found companionship after years alone. And here they were, deceiving all of them. Then Victor Grayson appeared. He materialized from the crowd like a bad omen, flanked by two well-dressed men Savannah didn't recognize. Cole, Mrs. Mercer. Victor's smile was sharp. Lovely to see you both. Have you met Edmund Hale? He's visiting from back east, business associate of mine. The world tilted. One of the men stepped forward, and Savannah's breath stopped in her chest. Edmund Hale. The man who'd destroyed her reputation. The man whose lies had followed her across the country, standing right there in front of her. Edmund's eyes widened with recognition and then gleaming satisfaction. Savannah Pierce, he said slowly. What a remarkable coincidence. Cole's hand tightened on hers, sensing something wrong. You two know each other? Victor asked innocently. Oh yes, Edmund said, his smile poisonous. We were quite well acquainted back in Philadelphia. Before Mrs. Mercer, had to leave town rather suddenly after some unfortunate accusations. The crowd around them went silent, everyone straining to hear. Savannah felt her face go numb. What kind of accusations? Someone in the crowd asked. Edmund turned to address the growing audience. Fraud, primarily. She posed as a respectable woman to gain access to wealthy families, then stole from them. Several homes reported missing valuables after she'd been employed there. And when I tried to help her, offered her honest work, she attempted to seduce me and then claimed I had compromised her when I refused her advances. The lies rolled off his tongue smooth as silk. Savannah couldn't speak, couldn't move. Cole's voice cut through the crowd, cold and sharp. That's quite an accusation. You have proof? I have testimony from multiple witnesses, Edmund replied. I've already shared the details with Victor here. He thought the good people of Caldwell should know who's living among them. Funny how your testimony only appears after she's married and protected, Cole said. Almost like you're being paid to lie. Edmund's smile didn't waver. I have nothing to gain from this except clearing my conscience. This woman is dangerous, Mr. Mercer. She destroyed several lives back east. I'd hate to see her do the same here. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Suspicious glances at Savannah. Whispered speculation. Victor watched it all with barely concealed satisfaction. Savannah finally found her voice. It's not true. He's lying. I never stole anything, never seduced anyone. Edmund Hale is the one who— Please, Edmund interrupted smoothly. Don't embarrass yourself further with denials. The evidence speaks for itself. What evidence? Cole demanded. Letters, witness statements, all properly documented and available for review if you'd like to see them. It was a trap. Perfectly constructed. Edmund had known this day would come. He'd prepared for it. Probably worked with Victor for months to coordinate this exact moment. The crowd was turning against her. Savannah could feel it happening, the shift from curiosity to suspicion to condemnation. She was losing. Then Cole stepped in front of her, blocking Edmund's view, and addressed the crowd directly. My wife's past is her own business. Whatever happened back east has nothing to do with who she is now. I've seen her character firsthand. I trust her. And if any of you have a problem with that, you can take it up with me directly. The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the minister spoke up. Cole's right. We judge people by their actions here, not gossip from strangers. A few others murmured agreement, but the damage was done. Doubt had been planted. Victor knew it. Edmund knew it. And worst of all, Savannah knew it. Cole took her hand again, this time not for show but for support, and led her through the crowd toward their horse. Nobody tried to stop them. They rode back to the ranch in crushing silence. When they finally arrived, Savannah slid down from the horse and stood there shaking. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have told you about Edmund. I should have warned you he might— Is it true? Cole asked quietly. Savannah looked up at him. What? What Edmund said? Any of it. Is any of it true? This was the moment he would doubt her, demand explanations, withdraw his protection because the cost had become too high. No, Savannah said. None of it is true. Edmund Hale was a man I rejected. He took it badly. He spread lies about me to destroy my reputation because his pride couldn't handle being told no. Cole studied her face for a long, awful moment. Then he nodded once. All right. All right, Savannah repeated. That's it? You believe me? You said it's not true. That's enough. But the evidence Edmund claims to have— can be faked, bought, fabricated. I've seen enough of Victor's work to know how easy it is to manufacture evidence when you have money and motivation. Cole's expression was steady. You've never lied to me, Savannah. I don't see why you'd start now. Something broke open in Savannah's chest. Nobody had ever just believed her before. Not her father, not her friends, not anyone. They'd all demanded proof, explanations, justifications. But Cole Mercer, this quiet, stubborn rancher she'd known for barely 2 weeks, looked her in the eyes and simply trusted her word. Thank you, she whispered. Cole reached out and touched her face gently, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. We'll fight this, he said, together. Victor and Edmund can throw whatever they want at us. We'll handle it. The touch lingered longer than it needed to. His hand was warm against her skin, rough from work, but impossibly gentle. Savannah's breath caught. For one suspended moment, they stood there in the fading afternoon light, close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his gray eyes, close enough that if either of them moved even slightly forward— Cole pulled back abruptly. I should check the fences, he said, his voice rough. Make sure nothing else was damaged while we were gone. He walked away quickly, leaving Savannah standing alone by the horse, her heart pounding and her mind reeling. The marriage was supposed to be fake, a strategy, protection. But the way Cole had touched her face, the way he'd defended her without hesitation, the way her pulse raced whenever he was near, none of that felt fake anymore. And that terrified her more than Victor Grayson ever could. Savannah didn't see Cole again until late that evening when he finally came in from checking the property. His clothes were dusty, his face drawn with exhaustion, and he moved like every muscle in his body hurt. She'd made dinner hours ago. The stew sat warming on the stove, mostly untouched because the ranch hands had eaten quickly and dispersed, sensing the tension hanging over everything. "You should eat something," Savannah said when Cole walked into the kitchen. He glanced at the pot, then shook his head. "Not hungry." "Cole, I said I'm not hungry." His tone was sharp, then he caught himself and exhaled slowly. "Sorry. It's been a long day." "I know." He pulled out a chair and sat down heavily, running both hands through his hair. For a moment he just sat there, shoulders slumped, looking more defeated than Savannah had ever seen him. "3 more sections of fence cut," he said finally. "Found one of the missing cattle dead in a ravine. The other 2 are gone. Probably sold off already or driven onto someone else's land to make it look like I can't manage my own herd." Savannah's hands tightened on the dish towel she'd been holding. "Victor's trying to make you look incompetent. It's working. Word's already spreading that Mercer Ranch is falling apart, that I'm too distracted by my new wife to run the place properly." Cole's laugh was bitter. "Which is exactly what he wants. Discredit me, isolate us, make it easier to challenge my ownership when the time comes. What does he gain from taking your land? Is it really just about the water rights?" "Mostly, but it's also about power. Victor doesn't like people telling him no. I've been doing that for 5 years." Cole looked up at her, and his eyes were tired. Bringing you here made it personal for him. Now it's not just about the ranch. It's about proving he can destroy anyone who opposes him. Guilt twisted in Savannah's stomach. "This is my fault." "No, it's not. If I hadn't hit him in the street, then he would have found some other excuse to come after me eventually. This was always going to happen." Cole stood up and walked to the window, staring out into the darkness. "I just didn't expect him to bring Edmund Hale into it. That was smart. Vicious, but smart." Savannah joined him at the window, standing close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body but not quite touching. "Edmund's testimony is fabricated," she said quietly. "The letters he claims to have, the witness statements, all of it is lies. But he's good at lying. He convinced an entire city I was a criminal. Convincing a frontier town will be easy for him. Then we need proof he's lying. How? It's his word against mine, and he's a wealthy businessman with connections. I'm nobody." Cole turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "You're not nobody," he said. "Not to me." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither of them was ready to acknowledge. Savannah broke eye contact first, her heart hammering. "We need a strategy. Edmund didn't come all the way out here just to ruin my reputation. Victor's paying him for something bigger." "Agreed, but what?" They stood there in silence, both thinking, until Savannah had an idea that made her stomach drop. "The marriage," she said slowly. "If Edmund can prove I'm a fraud, that I married you under false pretenses, or that I'm using you for money, Victor can petition to have the marriage annulled. And if the marriage is invalid, I lose legal protection as your wife." Cole's jaw tightened. "That son of a... It makes sense. Victor can't attack you directly without risking open conflict with the other ranchers. But if he destroys me and proves the marriage is fake, you lose credibility. Your judgment gets questioned. It weakens your position without Victor having to fire a single shot. We need to talk to a lawyer." "In Caldwell?" "Every lawyer in this county probably answers to Victor." "Then we go to Cheyenne. Find someone outside his reach." Savannah shook her head. "That takes time we don't have. Edmund's already spreading his story. By the time we get legal advice, half the territory will believe I'm a con artist." Cole slammed his hand against the window frame, making her jump. "Then what do you suggest? We just let them destroy your name and wait for the whole thing to collapse?" "No. We fight back, but not with lawyers." Savannah's mind was racing now, connecting pieces. "Edmund's story only works if people believe it. What if we can prove he's the liar, publicly, in a way Victor can't spin?" "How?" "I don't know yet. But there has to be something, some inconsistency in his story, some proof that he coordinated this with Victor ahead of time. She turned to face Cole fully. Edmund Hale is arrogant. He always has been. He'll make a mistake because he won't believe we're smart enough to catch him. For the first time that evening, something like hope flickered across Cole's face. You really think we can prove it? I think we have to try. Because if we don't, we lose everything. Cole held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. All right. Tomorrow we start digging. Letters, telegrams, anything that might connect Edmund to Victor before you ever arrived in Wyoming. If they planned this, there'll be evidence. Where do we even start looking? The land office? The telegraph office? The hotel where Edmund's staying? Cole's expression hardened. And we need to talk to people who might know something but are too scared of Victor to speak up. It was a long shot, but it was something. Savannah felt a surge of determination cut through her exhaustion. We should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. Cole nodded and moved toward the stairs, then paused. Savannah? Yes? What you said earlier about Edmund spreading lies because you rejected him, that took courage. Saying no when he expected you to fall in line. She managed a weak smile. I'm not sure courage is the right word. Stupidity, maybe. No, it was courage. Cole's voice was firm. Most people spend their whole lives saying yes to things that make them miserable because it's easier than fighting. You fought. That matters. He climbed the stairs before she could respond, leaving Savannah standing alone in the kitchen with tears burning behind her eyes. Nobody had ever called her brave before. Reckless, yes. Difficult, certainly. Too proud for her own good. But never brave. She wiped her eyes quickly and followed him upstairs. Eat. That night, sharing the room felt different than before. Cole set up his bedroll on the floor as usual, but the silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was charged with something else, an awareness that their situation had shifted into dangerous territory neither of them knew how to navigate. Savannah changed behind the dressing screen and climbed into bed wearing her nightgown, hyper-aware of Cole just a few feet away doing the same. Can I ask you something? She said into the darkness. Sure. Why did Rebecca really leave? I mean, the actual reason, not the version you tell people. Cole was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she said I made her feel invisible, that I was so focused on the ranch, on proving I could run it as well as my father, that I never actually saw her. She wanted adventure, excitement, someone who would drop everything to make her feel special. He paused. I couldn't be that person. This ranch is my responsibility. I can't just abandon it whenever someone wants attention. That's not the same as making someone invisible, Savannah said carefully. That's just being realistic about what you can offer. Try telling her that. Did you love her? Another long pause. I thought I did. Now I'm not sure I knew what love was supposed to look like. Maybe I just loved the idea of not being alone. Savannah understood that feeling more than she wanted to admit. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I don't think you make people feel invisible. You notice things, small things. You remembered how I take my coffee after one breakfast. You cleared out dresser space before I even asked. You stood between me and Edmund today without hesitation. That's different. It's not different. It's who you are. Rebecca was wrong about you. Savannah rolled onto her side, looking toward where she knew he was lying. You're not boring, and you don't make people invisible. You're just careful about who you let in. The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken things. Finally, Cole's voice came through the darkness, rough and low. You make it really hard to keep this marriage feeling fake. Savannah's heart stuttered. Cole, I know that's not what this is. I'm just saying, it's harder than I expected. Pretending in public, but knowing it's all strategy. My head understands the plan. The rest of me keeps forgetting. She should have said something to reinforce the boundaries they'd set. Something to remind both of them this was temporary. Instead, she whispered, I keep forgetting too. Neither of them spoke after that, but Savannah lay awake for hours, listening to Cole's breathing and wondering what the hell they were going to do when pretending stopped being enough. Morning came too early and too bright. Savannah woke to find Cole already gone, his bedroll neatly rolled and tucked against the wall. She dressed quickly and went downstairs to find Roy in the kitchen drinking coffee and looking grim. "Where's Cole?" she asked. "Rode into town at dawn. Said he had business at the land office." Savannah's stomach clenched. "Alone?" "Curtis went with him. I wanted to go too, but someone needs to watch the ranch." Roy poured her a cup of coffee without asking. "You look like hell." "Thanks. You're a real charmer. I'm serious. You didn't sleep." "Neither did you, apparently, since you're up this early commenting on other people's appearance." Roy grunted, which might have been amusement. "Cole told me about the plan, digging up proof that Edmund and Victor coordinated this whole thing. And I think you're both grasping at straws. But I also don't have a better idea, so I'm not going to argue." He set down his cup. "Just be careful. Victor's already 3 steps ahead. If you go poking around asking questions, he'll know about it within hours. We don't have a choice. Everyone's got choices. Some are just worse than others." Roy headed toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I believe you. About Edmund's lies. You don't have the look of a con artist." "What look do con artists have?" "More confidence. You mostly look scared and trying to hide it." Savannah didn't know whether to be insulted or touched. "Thanks, I think." Roy left, and Savannah spent the next few hours throwing herself into work to avoid thinking about what Cole might be discovering in town. She was kneading bread dough with probably more force than necessary when Curtis burst through the door, breathless and agitated. "You need to come," he panted. "Now, Cole found something." Savannah's heart leaped. "What? What did he find?" "Letters. In the land office records. Correspondence between Victor and someone in Philadelphia going back months. Way before you ever showed up in Caldwell." "Proof." Savannah wiped flour from her hands and followed Curtis outside to where Cole was dismounting, a leather folder tucked under his arm. His expression was tight with controlled anger. "Tell me," Savannah said as soon as he was close enough. Cole opened the folder and pulled out several sheets of paper. "The land office clerk is a kid, barely 20, scared to death of Victor. But he's also got a conscience. When I started asking questions about unusual correspondence, he got nervous and finally admitted he'd seen letters between Victor and someone out east." "Edmund?" "Not directly. Someone named Marcus Webb. But look at this." Cole spread one of the letters on the porch railing. "This is dated 4 months ago. It's asking about the Pierce woman and whether she could be located and convinced to travel west for employment opportunities." Savannah's blood went cold. "They were tracking me. It gets worse. This one," Cole pulled out another letter, "is from 6 weeks ago. Edmund confirming he can travel to Wyoming and provide testimony about your criminal history in exchange for payment and business considerations." "They planned the whole thing," Savannah breathed. "Before I even got on the stagecoach, they were setting the trap." Curtis whistled low. "That's conspiracy. Like actual legal conspiracy." "How did you get the clerk to show you these?" Savannah asked. Cole's expression was grim. "Told him Victor's going down one way or another, and he could either help us now and be remembered as someone who did the right thing or get dragged down as an accomplice when this all comes out. Kid made his choice." "Will he testify?" "Maybe. He's scared, but he's also tired of being Victor's errand boy." Savannah took the letters with shaking hands and read through them more carefully. The implications were staggering. Not only had Victor and Edmund coordinated her destruction, but the letters referenced other schemes: property manipulation, bribery of county officials, fraudulent land claims. "This isn't just about me," she said slowly. "This is evidence of years of corruption. If we bring this to the right people—" "The circuit judge," Cole interrupted. "He's due to arrive in Caldwell next month for the regular session. He's appointed from Cheyenne, answers to the territorial governor, not local interests. If we can get these letters in front of him along with testimony from the clerk and anyone else willing to talk—" "Victor goes to prison," Savannah finished, "and Edmund with him." For the first time since Edmund had appeared at the town gathering, hope flared bright in Savannah's chest. They had proof. Real, documented proof. Then Roy's voice cut through her excitement. "Assuming you both live long enough to present it." They turned to see the old ranch hand standing in the doorway, his expression dark. "What do you mean?" Cole asked. "I mean, Victor's not stupid. That clerk probably ran straight to him the minute you left. By now, Victor knows you've got those letters, knows you're building a case, and knows he's running out of time. Roy's jaw was set. Desperate men do desperate things. And Victor Grayson just became very, very desperate. The words hung in the air like a physical threat. Cole's hand moved instinctively to the gun at his hip. Double the watch tonight. Nobody works alone. And Savannah stays inside after dark. I'm not hiding, Savannah protested. You're not hiding. You're staying alive long enough to testify. Cole's tone left no room for argument. These letters are useless if we're both dead before the judge arrives. He was right, but it still rankled. Savannah had spent years running, hiding, letting powerful men dictate her movements through fear. She'd promised herself that was over. But staying alive to fight another day wasn't the same as surrendering. It was strategy. Fine, she said, but I want to help. There has to be more evidence we can find, more people who might be willing to talk if they know Victor's empire is crumbling. Cole considered this, then nodded slowly. All right, but carefully. We talk to people who have reasons to hate Victor, but have been too scared to act, and we do it quietly. I know someone, Curtis said suddenly. Eleanor Hale. Everyone turned to stare at him. Who? Savannah asked. Edmund's wife. She's staying at the hotel too. I saw her yesterday when I was in town. She looked miserable, like she'd rather be anywhere else. Cole's eyes narrowed. Why would Edmund's wife help us? Maybe she wouldn't. Or maybe, Curtis shrugged, maybe she's as much a victim of Edmund's schemes as anyone else. Worth asking, isn't it? It was a gamble, but Savannah understood something about women trapped beside cruel men. Sometimes all it took was one person offering an exit. I'll talk to her, Savannah said. Not alone, Cole said immediately. She won't talk if you're there. She needs to know I'm not a threat, that I understand. Savannah paused, choosing her words carefully. What it's like to be controlled by someone like Edmund. Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but Roy spoke first. Girl's right. Woman to woman, that conversation goes different, but, he pointed at Savannah. You take Curtis with you. He stays outside the hotel, visible, so she knows you've got backup, and you're back before sunset. It was a compromise. Savannah nodded. When? Tomorrow, Cole said. Gives us time to prepare and watch Victor's movements. If he's planning something, we'll see it coming. The plan was set. Savannah spent the rest of the day helping with ranch work while keeping one eye on the road, half expecting to see Victor and his men riding up with guns drawn. But the afternoon passed quietly. Too quietly. By evening, everyone was on edge. Dinner was a tense affair. The ranch hands ate quickly and left, most of them heading out to patrol the property in pairs. Roy took first watch on the house. Curtis volunteered for the midnight shift. Savannah cleaned up the kitchen while Cole checked and rechecked their ammunition, laid out guns within easy reach, and generally prepared for a siege that might or might not come. You think he'll attack tonight? Savannah asked, drying the last plate. I don't know. Victor's smart enough to know we're expecting something. He might wait, let us exhaust ourselves jumping at shadows. Cole set down the rifle he'd been loading. Or he might figure the best time to hit us is when we're most prepared because we'll convince ourselves he's waiting. That's a lot of second guessing. That's how you stay alive when someone wants you dead. The bluntness of it made Savannah's hand shake. Cole noticed and crossed the room to stand beside her. Hey, we're going to get through this. You don't know that. No, but I believe it. His hand found hers, warm and solid. We've got proof, we've got allies, and we've got each other. That's more than most people fighting men like Victor ever have. Savannah looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. The lamplight cast shadows across his features, but his eyes were steady and sure. When did you become an optimist? She asked, trying for lightness. About 5 minutes after you drove your elbow into Victor's ribs. Cole's mouth quirked in something almost like a smile. Figured anyone that stubborn had to be worth betting on. Stubborn. That's romantic. I'm a rancher, not a poet. Clearly. They stood there, hands clasped, something fragile and dangerous building between them. Savannah knew she should pull away, reinforce the boundaries. Remember this was temporary. Instead, she stepped closer. Cole's breath hitched. Savannah. Don't, she whispered. Don't remind me this isn't real. Not tonight. I'm tired of pretending I don't feel... She stopped herself, afraid of saying too much. But Cole's free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Feel what? He asked quietly. Safe. With you. Like maybe I finally found somewhere I could stop running. Cole's expression cracked, revealing something raw underneath. You have. This ranch, my home, it's yours too, for as long as you want it. What if I want it permanently? The question escaped before Savannah could stop it. Cole's eyes widened slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying this marriage started as strategy, but it doesn't feel like strategy anymore, at least not to me. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own voice. I'm saying I don't want an annulment when this is over. I want... She didn't get to finish. The window exploded inward in a shower of glass. Cole yanked Savannah to the floor, his body covering hers as gunfire erupted from outside. Bullets tore through the walls, splintering wood, shattering dishes. Shouts echoed across the property. The ranch hands returning fire, Roy bellowing orders. Cole grabbed the rifle he'd prepared earlier and moved toward the broken window, staying low. Stay down, he ordered Savannah, but she was already crawling toward the kitchen counter where another gun lay waiting. She'd learned to shoot years ago, back when her father still believed women should know how to defend themselves. The skill felt rusty now, but muscle memory took over as she checked the chamber and positioned herself behind the overturned table. Another volley of shots. Glass breaking upstairs. Someone screaming, Curtis or Roy, she couldn't tell. Cole fired back, the report deafening in the enclosed space. How many? Savannah shouted over the noise. At least 6, maybe more. Cole ducked as return fire punched holes through the wall above his head. Victor's not playing games anymore. A different sound cut through the chaos. Hoofbeats, multiple horses, coming fast. For a terrible moment, Savannah thought it was reinforcements for Victor's men. Then she heard Roy's voice. It's Thompson and his boys from the neighboring ranch. They heard the shooting. Back up. The gunfire from outside intensified as the newcomers joined the fight, but now it was directed away from the house, toward Victor's attackers. Cole used the distraction to move to a better position, firing carefully, methodically. Savannah stayed low, gun ready, every nerve screaming. Then, as suddenly as it started, the attack stopped. The sound of retreating horses faded into the night. Silence fell, broken only by harsh breathing and the creak of damaged wood. Everyone alive? Roy's voice called from outside. Here, Cole answered. Savannah? I'm fine. Curtis? Got grazed on the arm, but I'm good, the young cowboy called back. Slowly, cautiously, people emerged from cover. Cole helped Savannah to her feet, his hands checking her for injuries, even though she'd told him she was fine. You sure you're not hurt? He demanded. I'm sure. Cole, I'm okay. He pulled her against his chest suddenly, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. She felt him trembling. I thought, when the window broke, I thought... He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. Savannah wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face into his shoulder. I'm here. We're both here. They stood like that until Roy cleared his throat loudly from the doorway. Hate to interrupt, but we got problems. Cole released Savannah reluctantly and turned. What problems? Thompson found one of Victor's men wounded trying to crawl away. Before he passed out, he said this was just a warning. Victor's got something bigger planned for when the judge arrives. Roy's expression was grim. He's going to try to kill you both before you can testify. The words landed like a physical blow. Savannah felt Cole's hand find hers again, gripping tight. Then we make sure we're ready, Cole said, his voice steady despite everything. We fortify. We gather everyone willing to stand with us, and we protect that evidence until the judge gets here. You're talking about a war, Roy said. Victor started it. We're just going to finish it. Roy studied them both for a long moment, then nodded. All right, I'll spread the word. Anyone who's tired of Victor's bullying, anyone who's lost land or livestock or family to his schemes, we rally them here. Make our stand. He left to organize the others. Cole turned back to Savannah. The lamplight caught the cuts on his face from flying glass, the determination in his eyes, the set of his jaw. Last chance, he said quietly. You can still leave. Get on a horse, ride to Cheyenne, start over somewhere Victor's reach doesn't extend. I'd understand. Savannah looked at the destroyed kitchen, the bullet holes in the walls, the evidence of violence that had just invaded their home. Then she looked at Cole. This man who'd offered her shelter when she had nothing, who'd believed her without question, who just covered her body with his own when bullets started flying. "I'm not leaving," she said. "We're seeing this through, together. Even if it means fighting?" "Especially if it means fighting. I'm done running from men who think power gives them the right to destroy people." Cole's expression softened into something that looked dangerously close to pride. "All right then," he said. "Let's go to war." Tant. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Word spread fast through the county. Cole Mercer was making a stand against Victor Grayson, and he was calling in every favor, every debt, every promise of solidarity that had been made over the years. Ranchers arrived first, men who'd lost property to Victor's schemes, who'd been bullied and threatened and forced to watch their neighbors suffer in silence. Then came the merchants who'd been squeezed by Victor's control over supply routes. Even a few of the smaller landowners showed up, people who'd been waiting years for someone to finally challenge the man who'd made their lives miserable. By the third day, Mercer Ranch had transformed into something between a fortress and a gathering place. Armed men patrolled constantly. Women helped cook for the growing crowd. Children were sent to safer locations with relatives outside the county. And through it all, Savannah and Cole worked side by side, planning, organizing, preparing for whatever Victor would throw at them next. Savannah still needed to talk to Eleanor Hale, but the attack had made it too dangerous to go into town. Then Eleanor came to them. She arrived on the fourth morning in a hired wagon, alone, carrying a leather satchel and looking terrified but determined. Cole met her at the property line with 3 armed men, suspicious and ready for a trap. But Eleanor just held up her hands and said quietly, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I need to speak with Mrs. Mercer, please." They brought her to the house under guard. Savannah met her in the front room, Curtis standing just outside the door in case this was some elaborate scheme. Eleanor Hale was nothing like Savannah had imagined. She was small, fine-boned, with dark circles under her eyes, and the worn look of someone who'd been ground down by years of quiet suffering. "Thank you for seeing me," Eleanor said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you here?" Savannah asked, not unkindly. Eleanor set the satchel on the table between them. "Because my husband is a monster, and I'm tired of helping him destroy innocent people." She opened the satchel and pulled out a stack of letters, documents, ledgers. "This is everything," Eleanor continued. "Every scheme Edmund's been part of, every lie he's told, every person he's ruined, including you." She looked directly at Savannah. "I know what he did to you back in Philadelphia. I watched him plan it, execute it, laugh about it. I tried to stop him once, and he—" She stopped, pulling up her sleeve to reveal faded bruises. Savannah's stomach turned. "I stayed because I had nowhere else to go," Eleanor said. "My family disowned me for marrying beneath their expectations. Edmund controls all our money. Leaving meant destitution. But when he told me he was coming out here to help Victor Grayson ruin another woman's life, I realized I couldn't be complicit anymore, even if it cost me everything." Savannah reached across the table and took Eleanor's hand gently. "You're safe here. I promise. Victor and Edmund can't touch you on this property." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your kindness." "Yes, you do. You're doing the right thing now. That's what matters." They spent the next 2 hours going through Eleanor's evidence. It was damning. Correspondence proving Edmund and Victor had coordinated their attacks not just on Savannah, but on dozens of others across multiple states. Financial records showing bribery, fraud, extortion. Combined with what Cole had found at the land office, they now had enough evidence to bury both men permanently. "The circuit judge arrives in 6 days," Savannah said. "We just have to survive until then." Eleanor nodded, then hesitated. "There's something else. Victor's planning something for the day before the judge arrives. I overheard him talking to Edmund about it. He said if they can't stop you from testifying, they'll make sure there's no ranch left to testify from." "He's going to burn it," Cole said from the doorway. Both women turned to see him standing there, his expression carved from stone. "That's his play," Cole continued. "Destroy the ranch, scatter everyone who's gathered here, create enough chaos that the hearing gets postponed or dismissed. By the time things settle, he'll have disappeared the evidence and intimidated anyone willing to talk." "Can he do that?" Eleanor asked. "He can try." Cole's jaw set. "But we'll be ready." But The next 5 days crawled by with agonizing slowness. Every sound made people jump. Every rider approaching got scrutinized. Every shadow felt like a threat. Savannah barely slept, and when she did, nightmares of fire and gunfire jolted her awake. Cole was worse. He pushed himself relentlessly, checking defenses, coordinating patrols, planning contingencies until his eyes were bloodshot and his hands shook from exhaustion. On the 5th night, Savannah found him in the barn, long after everyone else had gone to sleep, staring at nothing. "You need to rest," she said quietly. "Can't. Too much to do." "Cole, you're going to collapse." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You haven't slept in 3 days." He turned to look at her, and the exhaustion on his face was heartbreaking. "If I sleep, I dream about finding you dead. So I'd rather stay awake." Savannah's throat tightened. She crossed the distance between them and took his hands in hers. "I'm not going to die," she said firmly. "You don't know that. Neither do you. But we can't fight if we're too tired to stand, so you're going to come inside, you're going to lie down, and you're going to sleep for at least 4 hours. That's not a request." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but then his shoulders sagged in defeat. 4 hours, he agreed. They walked back to the house together, and for the first time since the attack, Cole actually got into the bed instead of taking the floor. Savannah lay down beside him, on top of the covers, fully clothed, maintaining propriety even in exhaustion. "Savannah?" Cole's voice was rough with fatigue. "Yes?" "What you said before, about wanting this to be permanent. Did you mean it?" Her heart squeezed. "Yes. Even knowing how hard this life is? How isolated, how—" "I meant it," she interrupted. "I don't care about any of that. I care about you, about this place, about having somewhere I finally belong." Cole was quiet for a moment, then his hand found hers in the darkness. "When this is over," he said slowly, "when Victor's dealt with and the danger's past, I want to do this right. Court you properly. Ask you to marry me for real this time, not just for protection." Tears burned behind Savannah's eyes. "We're already married." "On paper. I want it to mean something. I want—" He struggled for words. "I want you to choose me because you want to, not because you had to." "I already have chosen you," Savannah whispered. "Every day since the first one." She felt him shift beside her, moving closer, until his forehead rested against hers. "I'm going to keep you safe," he promised, "no matter what it takes." "I know." They fell asleep like that, holding each other, stealing a few hours of peace before the final battle began. The attack came exactly when Eleanor had warned it would, the night before the circuit judge was scheduled to arrive. Savannah woke to the smell of smoke. She bolted upright, disoriented, and saw orange light flickering through the window. Fire. "Cole!" She shook him awake. "The barn's burning." They tumbled out of bed and ran outside to find chaos. Flames engulfed the barn, climbing high into the night sky. Men scrambled with buckets, trying to contain the blaze before it spread to other structures. And through the smoke and confusion, riders appeared, at least 20 of them, Victor's hired guns, taking advantage of the distraction to attack. Gunfire erupted immediately. Cole shoved Savannah toward the house. "Get inside! Protect the evidence!" But Savannah saw movement near the outbuildings, someone trying to flank them, get to the house from the side. She raised the gun she'd grabbed from beside the bed and fired. The figure went down. More shots. More screaming. The ranch had become a war zone. Cole fought alongside his men, directing the defense while simultaneously trying to organize the fire brigade. Roy took a bullet to the shoulder but kept firing. Curtis got knocked down by an explosion. Victor's men had brought dynamite. Through it all, Savannah moved between positions, shooting when she had clear targets, helping wounded men to safety, refusing to hide when everyone else was fighting for their lives. She found Eleanor crouched behind the water trough, clutching the satchel of evidence and looking terrified. "Stay down," Savannah ordered, then returned fire at an attacker trying to reach them. The battle raged for what felt like hours but was probably only 40 minutes. Then the tide shifted. Thompson and his neighboring ranchers had been waiting in concealed positions outside the property line. When Victor's men committed fully to the attack, Thompson's group hit them from behind, catching them in a crossfire. Victor's hired guns broke and ran, those who could still ride fleeing into the darkness. The barn was lost, but the fire hadn't spread beyond it. 6 of Victor's men lay dead or wounded on the property. On their side, Roy was injured, Curtis had a concussion, and 3 other ranch hands had taken wounds, but everyone was alive. As dawn broke over the smoke-filled ranch, Cole stood on the porch, covered in soot and blood, looking out at the destruction. Savannah joined him, equally filthy and exhausted. "We held," she said quietly. "Barely. But we held, and the evidence is safe. Eleanor's safe. In a few hours, the judge arrives and we can finally end this." Cole turned to look at her, and despite everything, the destroyed barn, the wounded men, the property damage, he smiled. "We make a good team," he said. "Yeah, we really do." The circuit judge arrived at noon, flanked by territorial marshals and looking thoroughly annoyed at being summoned to what he'd been told was a routine hearing. His annoyance turned to shock when Cole and Savannah presented their evidence. Letters, ledgers, testimony from Eleanor, from the land office clerk, from a dozen other people Victor had victimized over the years. The hearing lasted 3 hours. By the end, arrest warrants had been issued for Victor Grayson and Edmund Hale on charges including fraud, conspiracy, bribery, property manipulation, and attempted murder. Victor was arrested trying to flee to Denver. Edmund was caught at the train station in Cheyenne. Both men were gone within a week, hauled off to stand trial before a territorial court where their money and influence meant nothing. And just like that, the war was over. The silence after Victor and Edmund's arrests felt wrong somehow, like the absence of sound after prolonged gunfire, unnatural and disorienting. Savannah stood on the porch of the main house watching the territorial marshals ride away with their prisoners in shackles, and couldn't quite believe it was actually over. Cole stood beside her, one arm in a makeshift sling from a shoulder injury he'd gotten during the fight, but refused to acknowledge properly. His other hand rested on the porch railing, knuckles still scraped and bloody. "That's it?" Savannah said quietly. "They just leave?" "That's it. They'll stand trial in Cheyenne. Judge said with the evidence we provided, convictions all but guaranteed." Cole's voice was flat, emotionless. "Victor's looking at 20 years minimum. Edmund maybe 50. And we're supposed to just go back to normal life now?" "I don't know what normal looks like anymore." Neither did Savannah. The ranch was a disaster. The barn was completely destroyed, just a blackened skeleton of charred beams and ash. Bullet holes pocked every building. 3 sections of fence were down. Equipment was scattered, damaged, or missing entirely. And that was just the physical damage. Roy was laid up with his shoulder wound, refusing to admit how much pain he was in. Curtis had a bandage wrapped around his head and kept forgetting things mid-sentence. Half the ranch hands had injuries ranging from minor to serious. Thompson's neighbors had gone home to deal with their own properties, leaving just the core group to handle the aftermath. "We should check on Roy," Savannah said, needing something to do with her hands, her mind, the restless energy that came from surviving something that should have killed her. Cole nodded and followed her inside. They found Roy in the bunkhouse sitting on his cot, trying to clean his rifle one-handed and cursing steadily under his breath. "Let me do that," Savannah said, taking the weapon before he could argue. "I'm not an invalid." "You're injured. There's a difference." She sat down on the adjacent bunk and started working on the rifle properly. "How's the pain?" "Manageable." "That means terrible," Cole translated. He pulled up a chair backwards and straddled it. "Doc said you need to rest that shoulder for at least 3 weeks." "Doc's an idiot. I've had worse." "When?" Roy glared at him. "Lots of times." "Name one." "That time in 71 when—" Roy stopped, scowled. "You're trying to distract me." "Is it working?" "No." But some of the tension had left Roy's shoulders. Savannah recognized the tactic, Cole deflecting serious concern through banter because direct emotional honesty made him uncomfortable. She finished cleaning the rifle and set it aside. "We're going to need help rebuilding. The barn alone is going to take weeks, and that's assuming we can get the materials." "I'll talk to Thompson tomorrow," Cole said. "He offered to send some of his men over to help with repairs. Said it's the least he could do after we dealt with Victor for the whole county." "Decent of him." "Decent nothing. He's been wanting Victor gone for years. Just didn't have the spine to do it himself." Cole stood up, wincing slightly as the movement pulled his injured shoulder. "I'm going to check the livestock counts. Make sure we didn't lose more cattle in the chaos." He left before Savannah could offer to help. Roy watched him go, then turned to Savannah with a knowing look. "Boy's running scared." What do you mean? I mean he almost lost you 3 times in the past week, and now that the fighting's done, he doesn't know what to do with all the fear that's been keeping him moving. Roy shifted on the cot, grimacing. Cole's good at handling emergencies. It's the quiet moments that terrify him. Savannah thought about the conversation they'd had the night before the final attack. Cole's promise to court her properly, to make their marriage real when the danger passed. He said he wanted to do things right, she said quietly, after Victor was dealt with. And now Victor's dealt with, and Cole's realizing he actually has to follow through. Roy's expression softened slightly. Don't take it personal if he gets awkward. He's just trying to figure out how to be vulnerable without it killing him. Has he always been like this? Long as I've known him. His father was the same way, showed love through action, not words. Built this whole ranch for Cole's mother without ever once telling her directly that he adored her. But she knew. Anyone paying attention knew. Roy pulled out his pipe with his good hand. Cole's got that same problem. He'll fight a war for you, but asking you on a proper walk? That's somehow harder. Savannah stood up, feeling restless. I should go help with something. Sitting here talking about Cole while he's avoiding me isn't productive. Probably not, Roy agreed. But it's human. And you're allowed to be human after what you just survived. The words hit harder than expected. Savannah had spent so long in survival mode, running, hiding, fighting, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to just exist without constant threat hanging over her. She left the bunkhouse and wandered toward the remains of the barn, drawn by some morbid need to see the damage in full daylight. The structure was completely unsalvageable. Anything that hadn't burned outright was too smoke-damaged or weakened to use. They'd have to clear it all away and start from scratch. Savannah was standing there staring at the wreckage when Eleanor appeared beside her, moving so quietly that Savannah jumped. Sorry, Eleanor said quickly. Didn't mean to startle you. It's fine. I was just... Savannah gestured vaguely at the destroyed barn. Processing, I guess. Eleanor nodded. She'd been staying in one of the spare rooms in the house since arriving with her evidence, keeping mostly to herself except when needed for testimony or statements. I wanted to thank you, Eleanor said, for letting me stay, for protecting me when Edmund's men came. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did. You helped us when you didn't have to. That deserves protection. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, then asked, What happens now? For me, I mean. Edmund's going to prison, but I'm still his wife legally. I have no money, no family willing to take me in, no... Her voice cracked. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Savannah understood that fear intimately. You stay here until you figure it out, she said firmly. Cole won't turn you out, and neither will I. You helped save this ranch and everyone on it. That buys you time and safety for as long as you need it. I can't impose. It's not imposing if we're offering. Besides, Savannah managed a small smile. We're going to need all the help we can get rebuilding. You know how to keep books? Yes, actually. Edmund never let me touch his business accounts, but I managed our household finances. Then you just found a job. Roy's shoulder means he can't do heavy work for weeks. Curtis can't focus long enough to count past 10 right now. We need someone who can track expenses, coordinate supply orders, manage payroll for the extra workers we'll be hiring. Savannah looked at Eleanor directly. You interested? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. You trust me with that? You risked everything to do the right thing. Yeah, I trust you. For the first time since arriving, Eleanor smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. Thank you, she whispered. They stood together looking at the barn ruins, 2 women who'd survived men who'd tried to destroy them, and Savannah felt something shift inside her chest. She'd spent so long believing she had to face everything alone, that asking for help was weakness, that trusting anyone would inevitably lead to betrayal. But here she was, surrounded by people who'd fought beside her, who'd chosen to stand when running would have been safer, who'd proven that loyalty and community weren't just pretty words, but actual tangible things worth protecting. Maybe that's what home actually meant. Not a place, but people willing to defend each other. Curtis appeared from around the corner of the house, walking carefully like someone still dealing with balance issues. Savannah? Cole's asking for you. Says he found something weird with the cattle count. She excused herself from Eleanor and followed Curtis to the east pasture, where Cole stood with a tally sheet, looking confused. What's wrong? Savannah asked. Cole pointed at the grazing herd. We're up 12 head. Up? How is that possible? We lost cattle during Victor's attacks. I know, but I've counted 3 times. We've got 12 more than we should. He scratched his head, clearly baffled. Someone's been returning livestock. Who? No idea. They just showed up overnight. Thompson swears it wasn't him. None of the other neighbors have said anything. Savannah looked at the cattle, then back at Cole. Anonymous guilt? Maybe. Or Cole's expression shifted. Maybe people who were too scared to help while Victor was alive are trying to make amends now that he's gone, returning things they stole under duress or witnessed being stolen. It made sense in a strange way. For years, people had been forced to participate in Victor's schemes either directly or through silent compliance. Now that he was gone, some of them were trying to repair the damage in the only way they knew how. Well, Savannah said, at least something good came out of this mess. 12 somethings, Cole corrected. Then his expression turned serious. Can we talk? Somewhere private? Savannah's stomach flipped. Sure, where? Creek's probably best, least likely to be interrupted. They walked in silence toward the water, leaving Curtis to finish the cattle count on his own. The creek ran clear and cold, fed by mountain snowmelt even this late in the season. Trees clustered along the banks, providing shade and privacy. Cole stopped near a fallen log and stood there awkwardly, clearly trying to figure out how to start whatever conversation he'd brought her here to have. Savannah waited, giving him space. Finally, Cole said, I've been thinking about what happens next. Next with what? Us. The marriage. Everything. He turned to face her properly. When we started this, it was pure strategy. Protection. A way to keep you safe from Victor's legal maneuvering. I remember. But it's not that anymore. At least not for me. Cole's jaw worked. Somewhere between the paperwork and the gunfights and nearly dying together multiple times, it became real, and I need to know if... He stopped, frustrated with himself. I'm not good at this. At what? Talking about feelings, asking for what I want without making it sound like a business transaction. Despite the seriousness of the moment, Savannah almost smiled. You're doing fine. I'm really not. Cole took a breath. What I'm trying to say is that I want this marriage to be real. Not just legally, but actually. I want you to stay because you want to stay, not because you're trapped by circumstances or gratitude or... Cole, Savannah interrupted gently. Stop. He looked stricken. I know it's too much to ask. It's not too much. I'm stopping you because you're working yourself into a panic, trying to convince me of something I already decided weeks ago. She stepped closer. I want this to be real too. I have for a while now. Cole blinked. You do? Yes. I'm not entirely sure when it happened. Maybe when you believed me about Edmund without question. Maybe when you stood on that porch and ordered Victor off your land to protect me. Maybe when you slept on the floor for weeks even though your back was killing you because you wanted me to feel safe. Savannah reached for his hand. Probably it was all of those things combined. But somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending this was temporary and started hoping it could be permanent. Even knowing how hard this life is, how isolated the ranch gets in winter, how... I don't care about any of that, Savannah said firmly. I care about you. About building something real with someone who actually sees me instead of trying to reshape me into what they want me to be. Cole's expression cracked open, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. I see you. All of you. The stubbornness, the pride, the way you elbow tyrants when they grab you. That got a startled laugh from Savannah. The courage it takes to keep standing back up every time life knocks you down. I see all of it, and I... He stopped, struggling. You what? Savannah prompted gently. I love you, Cole said, the words coming out rough and unpolished but completely honest. I'm in love with you, have been for longer than I'm comfortable admitting. And I know that's fast and probably irresponsible given everything, but it's true. You scare me and ground me and make me want to be better than I am, all at the same time. Savannah's vision blurred with tears. You really are terrible at romance. I warned you. She kissed him, cut off whatever self-deprecating thing he was about to say by pulling him down and pressing her lips to his, pouring weeks of suppressed feeling into the contact. Cole froze for half a second in surprise, then kissed her back with an intensity that made her knees weak. His good arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Her hands tangled in his hair. The kiss deepened, became desperate and searching, like they were both trying to communicate everything words couldn't capture. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "That was," he started. "Overdue," Savannah finished. "I was going to say better than I imagined, but overdue works too." She laughed, the sound bright and genuine and free of the weight she'd been carrying for so long. "So," Cole said, his voice low and rough, "does this mean you're staying? For real this time, not just until the next crisis?" "I'm staying. Try to get rid of me and see what happens." "Wouldn't dream of it." Cole kissed her again, softer this time, sweet instead of desperate. "Fair warning, though. I'm going to want to do this properly. Court you the way I should have from the beginning. Take you to town for actual dinners, not just strategy meetings. Maybe even dance with you at the next town gathering, assuming we get invited to those again. We might not be the most popular couple in Caldwell for a while. Don't care. Let them gossip. We know the truth." They stood there by the creek holding each other until Curtis's voice carried across the pasture, calling for help with something. Cole sighed. Duty calls. It always does on a ranch. "You sure you're ready for this life? Because there's no sleeping in, no days off, no—" Savannah kissed him again, brief and firm. "I'm sure. Now let's go see what catastrophe Curtis has discovered this time." They walked back toward the house hand in hand, and Savannah felt lighter than she had in years. The next weeks passed in a blur of reconstruction and routine. Thompson sent 6 of his ranch hands to help rebuild the barn. Other neighbors contributed materials, labor, or both, partly from guilt over not standing up to Victor sooner, partly from genuine gratitude that someone finally had. Eleanor proved invaluable managing the chaos. She kept meticulous records, negotiated with suppliers, and somehow convinced the bank in Caldwell to extend credit for materials even though the manager had been one of Victor's cronies. "He's scared," Eleanor explained when Savannah asked how she'd managed it. "Half the people who worked with Victor are terrified their involvement will come out during the trial. They'll do anything to prove they're reformed." "You're scary when you want to be," Savannah observed. "Learn from the best. Edmund taught me a lot about manipulation. I'm just using it for good now instead of evil." Roy healed slowly, complaining the entire time, but secretly pleased when Eleanor insisted on personally changing his bandages because she didn't trust anyone else to do it properly. Curtis recovered faster, his memory issues fading after the first week, though he developed a nervous habit of touching the scar on his temple whenever he got stressed. Cole threw himself into rebuilding with single-minded intensity, working dawn to dusk until Savannah physically dragged him inside for meals and forced him to sleep. "You're going to work yourself to death," she scolded one evening when she found him attempting to repair fence line by lamplight. "Just want to finish this section. It'll still be there tomorrow. Come inside." "Savannah, that's not a request, Cole Mercer. Inside. Now." He grumbled but obeyed, which made Savannah hide a smile. Turned out being married to a stubborn rancher meant occasionally having to be equally stubborn in return. They fell into patterns that felt comfortable and right, working side by side during the day, eating dinner with whoever was around, spending evenings on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains. Cole made good on his promise to court her properly. Once a week, they'd ride into Caldwell for dinner at the small restaurant that had opened after Victor's arrest, freed up business opportunities. The first time they walked into the restaurant together, the entire room went silent. Cole ignored it completely, pulled out Savannah's chair, and proceeded to have a normal meal like they weren't being stared at by everyone present. By the third week, people stopped staring and started cautiously treating them like any other couple. By the 6th week, the minister's wife actually smiled at them in the general store. "We're becoming respectable," Savannah said with amusement as they rode home. "Don't get used to it. Next scandal comes along, will be old news." "I can live with that." She really could. Respectability had never been the goal. Survival, safety, and belonging, those were what mattered. 2 months after Victor's arrest, a letter arrived from the territorial court in Cheyenne. Cole read it twice, then handed it to Savannah without comment. She scanned the formal legal language and felt her stomach drop. Victor Grayson had been found guilty on all counts, sentenced to 25 years in territorial prison. Edmund Hale had pled guilty to conspiracy and fraud, sentenced to 18 years. It was over. Truly, finally over. How do you feel? Cole asked quietly. Savannah thought about it. Relieved, angry that it took this long and cost this much, sad for all the people they hurt who didn't get justice. She looked up at him, but mostly relieved. Yeah, same. They told Eleanor over dinner that night. She took the news calmly, setting down her fork and staring at her plate for a long moment. 18 years, she repeated. He'll be nearly 60 when he gets out. If he survives that long, Roy added bluntly. Prison's not kind to men like Edmund. Eleanor nodded slowly. I should feel something, satisfaction maybe, or vindication, but I just feel empty. Savannah reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That's normal. You spent years with him. Even if he was terrible, grief is still grief. I'm not grieving him. I'm grieving the time I lost, the person I might have been if I'd left sooner. Eleanor's voice was steady but sad. All those years wasted being afraid. They weren't wasted, Cole said. They brought you here, to people who actually value you. It was the most emotionally direct thing Savannah had ever heard him say to anyone besides her. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, all of you, for giving me a second chance. You gave yourself the second chance, Savannah corrected. We just provided the location. The conversation moved on to other topics, the barn construction, which was nearly complete, and the upcoming county meeting where new officials would be elected to replace those implicated in Victor's schemes. After dinner, Savannah and Cole took their usual evening walk around the property. The new barn stood skeletal but promising against the darkening sky. In another week it would be finished, better than the original in some ways because they'd learned from past mistakes. Strange how things work out, Cole said. What do you mean? 6 months ago, I was alone on this ranch, convinced I'd spend the rest of my life that way. Then you elbowed Victor Grayson in the ribs and everything changed, Savannah laughed. That's one way to meet your wife. It's definitely memorable. Cole pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders. You ever regret it? Coming here, getting tangled up in all this mess? Every time you wake me up at dawn to help with some ranch emergency, Savannah said, then softened. But no, not really. This is the first place I've ever felt like I could actually build a future instead of just surviving until the next disaster. What kind of future are you thinking about? The question was casual, but Savannah heard the hope underneath it. One with roots, she said carefully, with people I trust, with work that matters, and days that don't all blur together in fear. She paused. Maybe eventually, with a family, if that's something you want. Cole stopped walking and turned to face her fully. You want kids? Someday. Not immediately. We've got enough chaos rebuilding the ranch, but eventually, yes. She searched his face. Is that okay? Okay? Savannah, Cole seemed overwhelmed. Yes, yeah, that's more than okay. I just never let myself think that far ahead. Seemed like tempting fate. We've already tempted fate plenty. Might as well go all in. He kissed her there in the twilight, tender and slow, like they had all the time in the world. And maybe they did. For the first time in her life, Savannah could actually picture tomorrow, next week, next year, stretching out ahead of her without fear choking off the possibility. They walked back to the house as darkness fell, and Savannah noticed something she'd missed before. The ranch hands were gathered on the bunkhouse porch, talking and laughing. Eleanor sat with Roy, helping him clean tack while arguing good-naturedly about something. Curtis was teaching one of Thompson's borrowed workers how to play cards. It looked like community, like family, like home. You okay? Cole asked, noticing her pause. Yeah, Savannah said softly. Just realizing how lucky I am. We both are. They climbed the porch steps together, and Cole held the door open for her. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and wood smoke and something Eleanor had baked earlier. The simple domestic normalcy of it made Savannah's chest ache in the best way. I'm going to check the books before bed, Cole said. Make sure Eleanor's numbers match mine. They will. She's better at math than both of us combined. Probably true. He kissed her forehead. Don't stay up too late. Savannah watched him disappear into the small office, then climbed the stairs to their room. Their room. Not his room where she was temporarily staying. Their shared space, full of both their belongings, their routines, their life together. She changed into her nightgown and sat at the window, looking out over the dark landscape. Somewhere out there, Victor and Edmund were locked in cells, their power and influence reduced to nothing. Somewhere closer, people who'd survived their cruelty were slowly rebuilding. And here, in this room, in this ranch in the middle of Wyoming territory, Savannah Pierce, now Savannah Mercer for real, and not just on paper, was finally actually safe. The door opened quietly and Cole slipped in, already changed for bed. He didn't bother with the floor anymore. They'd stopped pretending weeks ago that they needed that distance. He climbed into bed beside her, and Savannah curled against his side, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "What are you thinking about?" Cole murmured. "How different my life is now compared to 6 months ago. How impossible this would have seemed back then. Good, different, or scary different? Both. Mostly good, though." Cole's hand traced idle patterns on her shoulder. "I love you, you know, in case I don't say it enough. You say it plenty, through actions if not always words. Still, want to make sure you know." Savannah tilted her head up to kiss him. "I know, and I love you too, even when you're being stubborn and working yourself half to death. Especially then? Especially then." They fell asleep tangled together, safe and warm and home. The next morning brought new challenges. A fence section down in the north pasture, a supply shipment delayed, Curtis accidentally letting 3 chickens into the main house that took an hour to catch. But they faced it all together, side by side, building something real out of the ashes of what had been destroyed. And somewhere in the middle of the chaos and work and daily routine, Savannah realized something important. She'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop, stopped bracing for the moment when everything would fall apart again. She'd learned to trust that this was real, that it would last, that she deserved the happiness she'd found. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done, harder than surviving Edmund's lies, harder than standing up to Victor, harder than any of the physical battles she'd fought. Learning to believe she was worthy of love and belonging after years of being told she wasn't, that took courage she hadn't known she possessed. But every day got a little easier. Every morning she woke up in Cole's arms and felt a little more certain this wasn't temporary. Every evening she sat on the porch watching the sunset and felt a little more like she belonged. And slowly, gradually, the woman who'd arrived in Caldwell with 37 cents and a travel bag full of fear transformed into someone she barely recognized. Someone strong, someone loved, someone home. 3 months after Victor's conviction, winter arrived in Wyoming with the kind of cold that made your bones ache and your breath freeze in the air. Snow fell heavy and constant for days, blanketing the ranch in white silence that was both beautiful and isolating. Savannah stood at the kitchen window watching the flakes come down, a cup of coffee warming her hands, and felt a contentment so profound it almost scared her. The new barn stood solid against the storm, packed with hay and sheltered livestock. The fences they'd rebuilt held strong. The house itself had been weatherproofed and reinforced, warm despite the temperature dropping well below freezing outside. They were prepared this time, ready. Cole came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Curtis just reported in from the north pasture," he said. "All the cattle are accounted for and look healthy. We're in good shape. Until the next storm. There's always a next storm. That's ranching." He kissed the side of her neck. "But we've got enough supplies to last through worse than this." Savannah leaned back against him, watching the snow fall. "I've been thinking." "About?" "About how strange it is that I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy. After everything that happened, all the violence and fear and near-death experiences, I should probably be traumatized and miserable. But I'm not." Cole was quiet for a moment, considering. Maybe trauma doesn't work the way people think it does. Maybe surviving something terrible doesn't automatically break you. Sometimes it just shows you what matters. What matters to you? This ranch. The people on it, you. He tightened his arms around her. Everything else is just noise. It was such a Cole answer, practical, direct, stripped of unnecessary emotion, but somehow deeply felt anyway. "Eleanor asked me something yesterday," Savannah said. "She wanted to know if we'd let her stay on permanently, not just until she figures things out, but actually make a life here." "What did you tell her?" "That it wasn't my decision alone, that we'd need to discuss it." Cole turned Savannah around to face him. "Do you want her to stay?" I do. She's become a friend. More than that, she's family in the way that matters. The chosen kind. Savannah searched his face. But this is your ranch, your home. I won't invite someone to live here permanently without your agreement. Our ranch, Cole corrected firmly. Our home. You get equal say in who stays and who goes. He paused, thinking. Eleanor's been good for this place. Roy actually smiles now, which I didn't think was possible. The books have never been cleaner, and she makes Curtis laugh, which is worth something after what he went through. So that's a yes? That's a yes. Tell her she's welcome as long as she wants to stay. Savannah kissed him, warm and grateful. Thank you. Nothing to thank me for. We take care of our own. The simple declaration made Savannah's chest ache in the best way. She'd spent so many years as an outsider, never quite belonging anywhere, that being claimed as family, as one of our own, still felt miraculous. The kitchen door banged open and Curtis stumbled in, covered in snow and shivering. It's colder than a... He caught sight of Savannah and edited himself. It's really cold out there. There's fresh coffee on the stove, Savannah said, stepping away from Cole. And I made extra biscuits this morning. Curtis dove for both with the enthusiasm of a 19-year-old who burned calories just by existing. Roy followed him inside a minute later, moving slower but looking significantly better than he had months ago. His shoulder had healed well, though he still favored it slightly when the weather turned bad. Storm's going to last another 2 days at least, Roy announced, shaking snow off his coat. Might be 3. We're locked in good. Everyone accounted for? Cole asked. Thompson's men headed home yesterday before it got bad. Everyone else is either in the bunkhouse or here. We're set. Being locked in by a blizzard should have felt claustrophobic. Instead, Savannah found it oddly comforting. The storm created a bubble of safety. Nothing could get in, but nothing could get out either. For a few days, the world narrowed to just the ranch and the people on it. Eleanor appeared from the office, ledgers tucked under one arm. She'd taken to wearing simpler clothes since leaving Edmond. Practical dresses instead of elaborate gowns, her hair in a single braid instead of complicated arrangements. She looked younger somehow, less burdened. The December accounts are balanced, she announced, and we're actually showing profit for the first time since the barn burned. That's good news, Cole said. Better than good. It means we can afford to hire 2 more permanent hands come spring. The ranch is growing. Roy grunted approval around his coffee. About time. We've been running lean for too long. The conversation shifted to plans for spring, which pastures to rotate, where to expand fencing, whether to invest in breeding stock or focus on fattening cattle for market. Savannah listened with half her attention while preparing lunch for the group. This was her life now. Domestic routines mixed with ranch business, practical concerns layered over genuine affection for the people around her. It wasn't glamorous or exciting. There were no dramatic declarations or grand gestures. Just life. Real, messy, complicated, beautiful life. After lunch, Eleanor pulled Savannah aside while the men argued about cattle genetics. Cole said yes? Eleanor asked hopefully. He said yes. You're welcome to stay as long as you want. This is your home now if you want it to be. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. You've earned your place here 12 times over. Savannah squeezed her hand. Besides, someone needs to keep the books from descending into chaos. Roy's system was basically, I think we have money, probably. That got a watery laugh. I'll do my best to maintain higher standards. They stood together in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Eleanor said quietly, I got a letter yesterday, from Edmund's lawyer. He wants me to visit him in prison. Savannah's stomach clenched. Are you going to? No, I wrote back and told him I have nothing to say that he'd want to hear. The lawyer said Edmund was hoping for reconciliation. Eleanor's expression hardened. He's hoping I'll wait for him. 18 years of my life waiting for a man who destroyed me repeatedly. What did you tell the lawyer? That I've already filed for divorce. That Edmund Hale is my past, not my future. That he can rot in prison alone for all I care. The venom in Eleanor's voice was new. She'd been so quiet, so careful about expressing negative emotions since arriving at the ranch. Good for you, Savannah said firmly. You don't think that's too harsh? I think it's exactly harsh enough. Edmund stole years of your life. You don't owe him a single second more. Eleanor nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. The lawyer also said Edmund's been trying to overturn his conviction, claims he was coerced into pleading guilty, that the evidence was fabricated. Is there any chance? None. The territorial court doesn't play games with that kind of thing. He's grasping at straws because he can't accept that he finally faced consequences. Eleanor's jaw set. Let him waste his time appealing. I'm done letting him occupy space in my head. It was a declaration of independence that Savannah recognized intimately. She'd made the same one herself months ago when she'd finally stopped running and started fighting. The storm raged outside for 3 days, exactly as Roy had predicted. The ranch became its own small world. Meals shared around the big kitchen table, evenings spent in the main room with everyone contributing to conversations or quietly doing their own work, nights when the wind howled so loud it sounded like living things screaming. On the third night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Savannah and Cole sat by the fireplace wrapped in blankets and watching the flames. I've been thinking about the future, Cole said quietly. What about it? Specifically about next year, the year after, building something that lasts beyond just us. Savannah shifted to look at him properly. You're talking about legacy. Maybe. Or just, I don't know, making sure the ranch survives whatever comes next. That if something happens to me, you'd be protected. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that. This life is dangerous. Accidents happen. Animals kick. Equipment fails. Winter storms kill people. Cole's voice was matter-of-fact, not morbid. I need to know you'd be okay. That the ranch would go to you legally. No questions, no challenges. We're married. Doesn't that cover it? Legally, yes, but I want it in writing. A will that explicitly states everything goes to you. And if we have children, eventually, provisions for them. He paused. Is that too dark to talk about? No, it's practical. Savannah leaned against him. Though I'd prefer we both live long enough to be old and annoying together. That's the plan. But plans don't always work out. He was right, of course. Savannah had learned that lesson repeatedly. We'll talk to a lawyer in Cheyenne, she agreed. Get everything documented properly. Make sure the ranch is protected no matter what happens. Cole kissed the top of her head. Thank you. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire burn down to embers. Then Savannah said, I want to start teaching. Cole looked surprised. Teaching what? Reading, writing, basic arithmetic. There are kids on the neighboring ranches who don't have access to proper schooling. Their parents are too busy working to teach them, and the nearest school is 20 miles away. Savannah had been thinking about this for weeks. I could hold lessons here once a week. Nothing formal, just enough to give them foundation skills. You want to turn the ranch into a school? Not a school. Just a place where kids can learn, where education isn't limited to families wealthy enough to hire tutors or live near towns. Cole considered this, his expression thoughtful. You'd need supplies, books, slates, paper. I know, it would cost money we might not have. We have enough, especially now that we're showing profit. He smiled slightly. Besides, educated neighbors make better neighbors. Kids who can read and calculate are kids who won't get swindled by the next Victor Grayson. Savannah felt warmth spread through her chest. You really think it's a good idea? I think it's a great idea, and I think you'd be good at it. Cole tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You've got patience, and you explain things clearly. That's most of what teaching is. I've never actually taught before, not formally. So you'll learn as you go. That's how everything works out here. The faith he had in her still caught Savannah off guard sometimes. Cole never questioned whether she could do something. He just assumed she'd figure it out and offered support along the way. It was so different from how Edmund had treated Eleanor, or how the men in Savannah's past had approached her capabilities. Cole didn't need her to be small so he could feel large. He wanted her to be everything she was capable of becoming, and he'd stand beside her while she did it. I love you, Savannah said suddenly. Cole's expression softened. I love you too. No, I mean, I love the way you love me, the way you believe in me without needing me to prove myself first, the way you make space for me to be fully myself instead of trying to reshape me into something easier to manage. Cole looked uncomfortable with the praise, the way he always did when conversations got too emotionally direct. That's just what you do when you love someone, he said. You let them be themselves. You'd be surprised how rare that actually is. They went to bed shortly after, climbing the stairs together and settling into the warmth of blankets and shared body heat. Outside, the storm finally began to ease. By morning, the snow had stopped and the sky was clearing to reveal hard blue winter sky. The ranch hands emerged from the bunkhouse and immediately started digging out paths, checking on animals, assessing damage. Savannah bundled up and went outside to help, her breath clouding in the freezing air. The world was transformed. Everything was white and clean and pristine, like someone had reset the landscape back to blank slate. She was helping Curtis clear snow from the porch when a rider appeared in the distance, moving slowly through the deep drifts. Cole emerged from the barn, hand automatically going to the gun at his hip until he recognized the rider. It was the minister from Caldwell, bundled against the cold and looking half frozen. "Reverend," Cole called as the man approached, "what brings you out in this weather?" The minister dismounted stiffly. "News from Cheyenne. Thought you'd want to hear it directly instead of waiting for the mail." Savannah's stomach clenched. "What news?" "Victor Grayson died 3 days ago. Pneumonia. The prison doctor said he'd been sick for weeks but refused treatment." The minister looked between them. "Thought you should know." The words hung in the frozen air. Victor was dead. The man who'd tried to destroy them, who'd terrorized the county for years, who'd built an empire on fear and corruption, gone. Savannah waited for relief, satisfaction, some sense of closure. Instead, she just felt tired. "Thank you for riding out to tell us," Cole said quietly. "Figured it was important. There's talk in town about what happens to his properties now. He had no family, no will. Everything's going to probate." "Not our concern anymore," Cole said firmly. The minister nodded, accepted the offer of hot coffee to warm up before his return ride, and left an hour later looking less frozen. Savannah and Cole stood on the porch watching him go. "Victor's dead," Savannah said, testing the words. "Yeah. I thought I'd feel different. Happier, maybe, or vindicated." "How do you feel?" She thought about it. "Like a chapter closed that I didn't realize I was still reading. He's been this presence in the back of my mind for months, this threat that might come back, might escape, might find a way to hurt us even from prison." She exhaled slowly. "Now he's just gone. And we're still here. We won. Not the way we expected maybe, but we survived and he didn't. That counts for something. Does it bother you that he died instead of serving his full sentence?" Cole shook his head. 25 years or death. Either way, he's not terrorizing anyone anymore. I'll take the outcome that keeps us safe." It was pragmatic and a little cold, but Savannah understood it. Victor Grayson had earned no sympathy. His death might even save some taxpayer money in prison costs. She refused to waste emotional energy mourning someone who'd tried repeatedly to destroy her. The weeks following Victor's death were strange. The county seemed to collectively exhale, like everyone had been holding their breath, waiting for his influence to somehow reach out from prison and cause new damage. Properties he'd owned went to auction. Businesses he'd controlled found new management. Officials he'd bribed either resigned in shame or got voted out in special elections. Caldwell transformed slowly from a town run by fear to one trying to figure out what normal governance looked like. It was messy and imperfect and sometimes frustrating, but it was progress. Savannah started her teaching program in February, once the worst of winter had passed. She'd expected maybe 3 or 4 children. 12 showed up the first week. They ranged in age from 6 to 14, some of them already helping run their family ranches, but desperately wanting to learn to read beyond basic signs and labels. Savannah set up the main room of the house as a makeshift classroom, using slates and borrowed books and whatever materials she could cobble together. Cole watched from the doorway during that first lesson, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Afterward, when the children had left and Savannah was cleaning up, he said, "You're good at this. I stumbled over the lesson plan 3 times. But you kept going, and those kids were hanging on every word." He smiled. "You might have accidentally started something bigger than you intended." He was right. By the 4th week, she had 18 students. By the 8th week, parents were asking if she could teach basic mathematics too. The ranch became known throughout the county as the place where anyone could learn, regardless of ability to pay or social standing. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely wonderful. Spring arrived in bursts of green and mud and new calves stumbling on unsteady legs. The ranch hands Cole had hired worked out well. Two brothers from Colorado who knew cattle and didn't mind hard work. Eleanor's divorce finalized in March. She celebrated quietly by burning every letter Edmund had ever sent her in the fireplace, watching the paper curl and blacken. "That's the last piece of him," she said as the ashes scattered. "I'm finally free." Roy proposed to her 2 weeks later in the most awkward, stumbling way possible, and Eleanor said yes while laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm too old for this," Roy grumbled afterward, but he was smiling. "You're never too old to be happy," Eleanor countered. They got married in April in a simple ceremony at the ranch with everyone gathered around. Savannah stood beside Eleanor as witness, and Cole stood beside Roy, and the minister who'd ridden through the blizzard to bring news of Victor's death performed the service. It was small and genuine and perfect. Watching them, Savannah felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. Later, in the privacy of their room, she asked Cole, "Do you ever wish we'd had a real wedding instead of just signing papers in a courthouse?" Cole looked up from the book he'd been pretending to read. "Do you?" "Sometimes. I mean, I'm happy with how things worked out, but occasionally I wonder what it would have been like to make those promises in front of people we care about, to have the memory of actually choosing each other publicly." Cole set down the book and pulled her close. "We could still do that." "What do you mean?" "Renew our vows. Have an actual ceremony this time, now that we're not running from anything or using marriage as a legal shield." He looked at her seriously. "Marry me again, Savannah. For real this time. Because we want to, not because we have to." Savannah felt tears prick her eyes. "Are you proposing? Again?" "I'm proposing better. With actual choice involved instead of desperation. We don't need a fancy ceremony. I'm not talking about fancy. I'm talking about standing in front of our family, Roy and Eleanor and Curtis and everyone who fought beside us, and promising to love you for the rest of my life. Out loud, where everyone can hear it." Cole's expression was earnest and vulnerable. "I want that memory, don't you?" "Yes," Savannah whispered. "Yes, I want that too." They held their ceremony in June when the Wyoming landscape was at its most beautiful and the weather was reliably warm. The entire county seemed to show up. Neighboring ranchers and their families, merchants from Caldwell, students from Savannah's classes and their parents, Thompson and his crew. Even the circuit judge made an appearance, curious to see how the couple who'd brought down Victor Grayson celebrated their union. Savannah wore a simple dress that Eleanor had helped her sew, white cotton with delicate embroidery at the collar and sleeves. Nothing elaborate, but it was hers and it was new and it felt right. Cole wore his best shirt and looked uncomfortable in the good way of someone cleaned up for special occasions. They stood on the porch of the main house with the mountains visible behind them and promised to love, honor, and stand beside each other for as long as they both lived. This time the words meant something different. This time they weren't strategy or protection. They were choice, commitment, a future consciously built together. When the minister pronounced them married, again, technically, but really for the first time that counted, Cole kissed her in front of everyone, and the gathered crowd cheered. The celebration lasted until dark, with food and music and dancing that Savannah would have found overwhelming a year ago, but now just felt like joy. She danced with Cole until her feet hurt, then with Roy, then with Curtis, then with half a dozen other men who'd helped defend the ranch. Eleanor cried happy tears and kept hugging Savannah at random intervals. Even the minister got slightly drunk on whiskey and told rambling stories about weddings he'd performed over the years. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Savannah found herself standing at the edge of the crowd, watching everyone talk and laugh and celebrate. Cole appeared beside her, slipping his arm around her waist. "Tired?" he asked. "Happy. There's a difference." "Yeah, there is." They stood together watching their community, because that's what it had become. A community of people who cared about each other and showed up when it mattered. "Thank you," Savannah said quietly. "For what?" "For this. All of it. For seeing me as someone worth fighting for, even when I'd stopped believing that myself." Cole turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Savannah, you've always been worth fighting for. You just needed someone to prove it to you. You did. Every day, in 100 small ways. That's what love is," Cole said simply. "Showing up, choosing each other even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Savannah kissed him, soft and sweet, tasting whiskey and hope. When they finally went inside hours later, the house was quiet and the celebration had wound down. They climbed the stairs to their room, genuinely their room now, in every sense, and helped each other undress with the comfortable familiarity of people who'd earned their intimacy through shared survival. In bed, wrapped in each other's arms, Savannah felt a completeness she'd never experienced before. Not perfection. They'd still have hard days, arguments, moments of doubt and frustration, but they'd face those things together, and that made all the difference. Summer passed in a blur of work and growth. The ranch expanded further. The teaching program grew to include adult classes for parents who wanted to learn alongside their children. Eleanor and Roy settled into married life with the comfortable ease of people who'd already survived their worst before finding each other. Curtis announced in August that he was courting a girl from a neighboring ranch, and everyone pretended to be surprised, even though it had been obvious for months. The new barn stood solid and functional, already holding the hay harvest that would feed cattle through the next winter. In September, Savannah discovered she was pregnant. She'd suspected for a few weeks, but hadn't said anything, partly from superstition and partly from wanting to be absolutely certain before raising hopes. She told Cole one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, their ritual that had remained constant through every change. "I'm pregnant," she said simply. Cole went very still. "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be without a doctor confirming it. But yes, I'm sure." For a long moment, Cole didn't move or speak. Then he stood up, pulled her gently to her feet, and wrapped her in the tightest embrace she'd ever felt from him. "We're going to have a baby," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We're going to have a baby," Savannah confirmed. Cole pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright. "Are you okay? Do you need anything? Should you be sitting down? Should I get the doctor from—" "Cole, breathe. I'm fine. Pregnant women don't shatter if you look at them wrong." "I know that. He ran a hand through his hair. "I want to do this right. Be a good father, not mess it up." "You won't mess it up. You'll be wonderful." Savannah took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "This child is going to grow up knowing they're loved and wanted and protected. That's more than a lot of people get. We need to prepare. Build a nursery, get supplies, make sure the house is safe. We have 7 months. That's plenty of time." But Cole was already planning in that focused way he had when presented with a challenge. Savannah let him talk himself through the logistics, while she sat back down and watched the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. She was going to be a mother. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. What if she wasn't good at it? What if she made mistakes? What if she passed on her own traumas and fears to an innocent child? But then she thought about the community they'd built here. Eleanor and Roy would be there, Curtis and the other ranch hands, the families from neighboring ranches, the students who'd learned to read in her makeshift classroom. This child wouldn't be raised in isolation. They'd be surrounded by people who'd chosen to show up and support each other. That was more than Savannah had ever had growing up. And maybe that's what breaking cycles looked like. Not being perfect yourself, but creating an environment where perfection wasn't required for love. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Savannah spent the first 3 months feeling nauseated more often than not. Simple smells became overwhelming. She couldn't teach some days because standing for long periods made her dizzy. But Eleanor helped manage the classes when Savannah couldn't. Roy took over more of the household tasks without being asked. Cole hovered anxiously and tried not to show how worried he was, which would have been annoying if it wasn't so sweet. By the 4th month, things stabilized. Savannah's energy returned. Her stomach settled. The initial fear gave way to cautious excitement. Cole built a nursery in the room next to theirs, spending evenings carefully constructing a cradle from wood he'd selected and aged specifically for the purpose. "My father made my cradle," he explained one night as he sanded the wood smooth. "I want our child to have something made by their father, too." "You're going to be such a good dad," Savannah said, watching him work. "I hope so. I'm terrified I won't be. That fear means you will try. The bad parents are the ones who never question themselves." Winter arrived again, the second one Savannah had spent on the ranch. This time it felt different, less isolating, more cozy. The house was fuller. Eleanor and Roy had moved into one of the outbuildings they'd renovated, giving the main house more space but still staying close. Savannah spent long afternoons sitting by the fire, her swelling belly making it harder to move around, but also creating a sense of anticipation she'd never felt before. The baby kicked regularly now, strong, insistent movements that made her gasp and laugh and press Cole's hand against her stomach so he could feel it too. "That's our kid," Cole would say with wonder every single time, like it was a miracle he couldn't quite believe. In February, when Savannah was 8 months pregnant and ready to be done with the whole experience, Eleanor sat her down for a serious conversation. "I want to ask you something," Eleanor said carefully. "What?" "After the baby comes, would you want help? Roy and I have talked about it, and we'd be honored to be involved in raising your child if you'd let us. Not as parents, obviously, but as family." Savannah felt her throat tighten. "You want to be grandparents? Is that presumptuous? I know we're not blood related, but it's perfect," Savannah interrupted. "Yes, absolutely yes. This child is going to need all the family they can get." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I never thought I'd have this. After Edmund, after everything, I didn't think family was possible for me anymore." "Family isn't about blood," Savannah said firmly. "It's about who shows up, who chooses to stay, who loves you even when it's inconvenient. Then Roy and I choose to stay, for you, for Cole, for this baby." They hugged, awkward around Savannah's belly, both crying and laughing at the same time. The baby arrived on a cold March morning 3 weeks before the official due date. Savannah had been having what she thought were false contractions for hours before realizing they were the real thing. Cole went into full panic mode, sending Curtis racing for the doctor while trying to help Savannah stay comfortable and simultaneously preparing everything the midwife had said they'd need. Eleanor took charge with calm efficiency, boiling water and gathering towels, and talking Savannah through the pain with the steady voice of someone who understood suffering but refused to be controlled by it. Labor lasted 14 hours. It was the longest, most painful, most transformative experience of Savannah's life. When she thought she couldn't continue, that her body would break under the strain, Eleanor held her hand and said, "You can do this. You're strong enough. I've seen what you can survive. You can survive this too." And somehow, she did. The baby arrived screaming and furious, perfect and healthy, and absolutely beautiful. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, placing the tiny squalling bundle on Savannah's chest. A daughter. Savannah looked down at this impossibly small person, red-faced and crying, and felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. This was her child, her daughter, her legacy. Cole appeared at her side, looking terrified and awed in equal measure. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's ours," Savannah said. They named her Grace, partly because it was a beautiful name, and partly because Grace was what had brought Savannah through every impossible moment of the past 2 years. Grace slept in the cradle Cole had built, wrapped in blankets Eleanor had sewn, surrounded by a family that chose each other instead of being bound by obligation. The first weeks were exhausting in ways Savannah hadn't anticipated. She was sore, sleep-deprived, anxious about every tiny sound Grace made. But Cole was there, taking night shifts when Savannah was too tired to function, learning to change diapers and swaddle with the same focused determination he applied to everything. Eleanor helped during the days, teaching Savannah things about infant care that nobody had bothered to explain. Roy, surprisingly, turned out to be a natural with babies. He'd rock Grace for hours, humming old songs in a surprisingly decent voice, and she'd settle immediately in his arms. Curtis was terrified of holding her at first, convinced he'd break something, but eventually learned and became protective in that fierce way of people who'd fought beside her parents. The ranch continued around them. Cattle needed feeding, fences needed mending, work never stopped just because a baby had arrived. But somehow, they made it work. Savannah taught classes with Grace sleeping in a basket nearby. Cole worked with the ranch hands while checking in every few hours. Eleanor managed the books and the household simultaneously. They adapted, adjusted, figured it out together. And slowly, Grace became part of the ranch's rhythm as much as anyone else. One evening in late spring, when Grace was 3 months old and finally sleeping through most nights, Savannah found herself on the porch again with Cole. Grace was inside sleeping. Eleanor and Roy were in their own home. Curtis was in town courting his girl. The other ranch hands were in the bunkhouse. For the first time in months, it was just the two of them. "This is nice," Savannah said, leaning against Cole's shoulder. "What is?" "Quiet. Just us. I love our daughter more than anything, but I'd forgotten what it felt like to have a conversation that didn't involve milk schedules or diaper changes. Cole laughed. She's worth it, though. Absolutely worth it. I'm just saying I appreciate these moments, too. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains. I've been thinking, Cole said eventually. About? About how different my life is now compared to 3 years ago. How impossible all of this would have seemed back then. Savannah knew exactly what he meant. 3 years ago, she'd been running from Edmund's lies with almost no money and no plan beyond survival. 2 years ago, she'd arrived in Caldwell desperate and alone, certain she'd never find safety anywhere. Now she was sitting on the porch of her own ranch, married to a man who loved her completely, with a daughter sleeping inside and a community that actually cared whether she lived or died. Do you ever miss the simplicity? Savannah asked. When it was just you and Roy and running cattle without all the complications? No, Cole said immediately. That wasn't simple. It was lonely. I just didn't realize how lonely until you showed up and reminded me what connection felt like. He pulled her closer, his arms solid and warm around her shoulders. I don't regret a single moment, he continued. Not the fights with Victor, not the burned barn, not the sleepless nights with a newborn. All of it brought us here. To this, and this is exactly where I want to be. Savannah felt tears prick her eyes, the emotional kind that came from being seen and loved exactly as she was. I want to tell you something, she said quietly. What? For the longest time, I thought happiness was something other people had, something I'd never achieve because I was too damaged, too difficult, too much trouble. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But you taught me that happiness isn't some perfect state where everything's easy. It's choosing to build something good even when it's hard. It's showing up for people who show up for you. It's deciding that you deserve love and then doing the work to accept it. Cole turned to look at her directly. You do deserve love, Savannah. You always did. I know that now. Because of you. Because you believed it even when I couldn't. They kissed, soft and slow, the kind of kiss that wasn't about passion, but about connection. About two people who'd fought for the right to be together and won. Inside the house, Grace started crying. Savannah sighed. That's my cue. I'll get her, Cole said, standing. You stay here. Enjoy the sunset. He disappeared inside, and Savannah heard him talking to Grace in that gentle voice he reserved just for their daughter. A minute later, he returned carrying Grace, who'd stopped crying and was making those soft cooing sounds that meant she was content. Cole sat back down. Grace nestled in his arms, and the three of them watched the sky turn colors together. This was it, Savannah realized. This was what she'd been searching for her entire life without knowing how to name it. Not perfection, not safety from all harm, not even constant happiness. Just this. Belonging. Purpose. People who chose to love her and let themselves be loved in return. A place where her past didn't define her future. A home built on trust instead of fear. What are you thinking about? Cole asked, noticing her expression. Everything and nothing, Savannah said. How far we've come, how much has changed, how grateful I am for all of it. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They made the good parts matter more. Grace yawned hugely, her tiny face scrunching up, and both her parents laughed. The years that followed weren't without challenges. There were harsh winters and mild ones, good harvests and lean times, neighbors who became friends and ones who remained distant, students who thrived and ones who struggled. Grace grew from infant to toddler to young girl, running wild across the ranch with the same stubborn independence her mother had shown. Savannah's teaching program expanded until the county finally built an actual schoolhouse and hired her officially, paying a real salary for work she'd started doing for free. Eleanor and Roy grew older together, bickering and laughing in equal measure, proving that it was never too late to find happiness. Curtis married his girl and started his own small ranch nearby, frequently bringing his own children to visit and play with Grace. Cole's hair started going gray at the temples, but he claimed Savannah and Grace were worth every silver strand. The ranch itself prospered. New hands were hired and trained. Buildings were added. The herd grew. Their reputation for honest dealing and quality livestock spread throughout the territory. And through it all, Savannah and Cole stood beside each other. They argued sometimes. had disagreements about how to handle ranch business or raise their daughter or deal with difficult neighbors, but they never once doubted the foundation they'd built. On Grace's 10th birthday, the whole county showed up to celebrate. It had become tradition, the Mercer Ranch hosting gatherings that brought people together, creating community in a harsh landscape that could easily isolate. Savannah watched Grace running with the other children, fearless and free, and felt a profound satisfaction. Her daughter would never know what it felt like to be powerless, to be hunted by cruel men, to believe herself unworthy of love. Grace was growing up surrounded by people who chose kindness, who stood up to bullies, who believed that protecting each other mattered more than protecting profit. That was the legacy Savannah wanted to leave, not land or money or possessions, but the knowledge that building community, choosing courage, and refusing to accept cruelty as inevitable could actually change the world, or at least change one small corner of Wyoming. "She's happy," Cole said, appearing beside Savannah with 2 cups of lemonade. "She is," Savannah agreed. "We did good." "We did great." Cole handed her a cup. "And we're not done yet. Got a lot more years ahead of us." "Good. I plan to be old and annoying with you for a very long time. Looking forward to it." They touched cups in a quiet toast, celebrating not just Grace's birthday, but everything they'd survived and built together. That night, after the guests had left and Grace was asleep and the ranch was quiet, Savannah stood once more on the porch, looking out over the land. Cole joined her, as he always did, slipping his arm around her waist. "Remember when we first stood here?" Savannah asked. "Right after you offered me the job? You looked terrified." "I was terrified. Of you, of the ranch, of Victor, of everything. And now?" Savannah leaned into him, solid and warm and home. "Now I'm just grateful. For all of it. Even the scary parts. Because they led here. Any regrets?" She thought about the question seriously. The violence they'd survived. The fear they'd endured. The scars both visible and invisible that they'd carry forever. "No," she said finally. "No regrets. I'd do it all again exactly the same way if it meant ending up here with you." Cole kissed the top of her head. "Me too." They stood together as darkness fell and stars emerged overhead. 2 people who'd found each other in the chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage. And somewhere inside the house, Grace slept peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams 10-year-olds dream, safe and loved and free. The woman who'd arrived in Caldwell with 37 cents and a travel bag full of fear no longer existed. In her place stood Savannah Mercer, teacher, mother, wife, survivor, fighter. Someone who'd learned that home wasn't a place you found. It was something you built with your own hands, alongside people brave enough to build it with you. And she had never spent another day running,